Warning. The information shared in these conversations and videos are intended for general knowledge and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered as legal advice or professional guidance. Additionally, any documentation or references to specific content are solely for the purpose of discussion and understanding. It does not imply endorsement, promotion, or support of said content. The views expressed in these videos and/or conversation are those of the individuals involved and do not represent any official stance or opinion. The content you are about to experience may contain strong language, including explicit words and phrases. This language is used for artistic expression and may be integral to the storyline or character development. It is important to note that the use of such language does not endorse or promote offensive behavior. Viewer discretion is advised, and please enjoy the show responsibly. Disclaimer. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. The Canadian Copyright Act, Section 29, allows an individual to use copyright-protected materials when creating a new work, such as a mashup, and to post the new work online on a site like YouTube. Fair dealing provision for specific purposes like research, private study, education, parody, satire, criticism, review, and news reporting.
Step up, step up! Yeah! We clash! We clash! We clash! We clash! Yeah! Step in the arena, mind locked and loaded. Truth on my blade, every line's exploded. You swing your words, I counter with precision. Battle of reason, this is my mission. Raise your fist, let them know. No. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo! We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. Step back, I'm a scholar and a fighter. Every claim you throw, I strike tighter. Logic and power, I never fold. In the war of words, I'm solid gold. Raise your fist, let them know. Whoa. Raise your voice, let it blow. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. Yeah. No fear, no chain, no treason. Woo. We clash our swords of reason. Every thought a fortress, every claim a storm. We forge a truth where chaos takes form. Ideas ignite like lightning through the night. In the war of minds, we bring the light. Step in, feel the heat. Truth is my weapon, never beat. Raise them high, break the ceiling. With a fire, with a feeling. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through like no retreating. No fear, no chain, no treason. We clash our swords of reason.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Swords of Reason right here on the Speak Easy Show, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and today, Thursday. This is where logic meets passion. If you're new here, the format's simple. Each debater gets 10 minutes for the opening statements, followed by 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. Then we open the floor for a full hour of back and forth debate before wrapping it up with a 5-minute closing statement from each side. After that, we'll spend 30 minutes answering questions from the chat. I'll drop a live Q&A in the chat for you to put your questions in for the debaters. But the super chats, PayPals, and Cash Apps will get priority. And if they fill up the 30 minutes, then your questions in the live Q&A may not get answered. So if there's a question you really want answered, make sure you send it in a super chat. And then once the formal debate is done, we open the doors to the community for a chaos and chill panel. This is optional for the debaters to stay for this. This is where anyone can hop in, challenge, or question the debaters if they choose to stay. And today's debate prompt is Christian nationalism un-American. And today's debaters for the affirmative, we have Connor, a.k.a. Counterpoints, who has 2 channels here on YouTube. You can find them both in the description of the video. One is Counterpoints 40K, where he's known for Warhammer breakdowns and sci-fi weapon reviews, and also Counterpoints Politics, where he's known for covering online politics and drama, trying to build a center coalition. And for the negative, we have Made by Jim Bob, a professional noticer with a channel also here on YouTube, again, found in the description. Known for his philosophical breakdowns, sharp satire, debates, and hand-drawn comics. So, debaters, you know the rules. And we're going to start with counterpoints with the affirmative for your opening statement. So whenever you're ready, we'll start the timer up with your voice. And again, thank you both for being here. You're muted on the stream.
Muted. Okay.
There you go.
We're good. Professional streamer. So anyways, the Christian nationalism is un-American. I understand that the vast majority of people who, and I'm probably not going to need the whole 10 minutes, by the way. So the vast majority of the people who emigrated to this country originally were Christian. However, the First Amendment itself effectively says that Congress shall pass no laws in reference to a man's religion. It effectively allows freedom of conscience and freedom of speech. Secularism has been happening over the past 200 years as a result of scientific advancement, and freedom of conscience and freedom of speech are still enshrined within our Constitution. Now, you can make the argument that Christianity has been a huge part of America. I agree. You can also argue that nationalism, meaning that identifying your people, is a huge part of American history. But what I would say is that Christian nationalism, the way that I see it, is advocating for Christendom, basically the body of Christ, the church, and unifying those people within Christian belief, and then advocating for them from a political perspective. And I think that if you look at that, it's contrary to the Constitution. It's contrary to our culture. It's contrary to the modern culture. And by the way, if you want Christendom to be enshrined as the quote unquote, like natural historical posterity of the United States of America, go ahead. But what you're going to need is you're going to need to repeal the First Amendment of the United States, and you're going to need to rewrite it. And you're going to need to say that the United States is an explicitly Christian nation, and that we actually do not need to separate church and state. And that Christendom, that like the United States is an advocate for Christendom, and that it wants to unify the peoples who are unified by Christianity in order to advocate in their political self-interest. However, I don't think that you're going to be able to achieve that legislatively. I barely think you're going to be able to achieve that culturally. And honestly, I think that Christianity is probably on the back foot for a variety of reasons, but I'll leave that for the open.
All right. Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we're going to hand over the mic to Made by Jim Bob for your opening statement. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
All right, cool. Is Christian nationalism un-American or American? Well, Christian nationalism would be the belief that Christians should form a people with unified principle and interest who use the state to further promote their collective interests. American, we should probably define that relating to or characteristic of the United States and its inhabitants. Obviously, Connor conceded right away that we have a history in the United States, gives a very different account of what most progressives say the past was. The founders did not build this nation on a neutral or purely Enlightenment foundation. They repeatedly drew from the Bible, especially the political blueprint found in Deuteronomy in particular. In fact, it's the single most cited source in the founders' political writings. I would argue that not only the language is reflective of a Christian paradigm, but the United States system of governance is reflective of a church system. Judges in ceremonial robes, legal high places of judgment, national hymns, civic dogmas, public oaths, and shared moral framework treated as sacred. These are religious forms infused with Christian moral assumptions, the most important of which is that humans are endowed with a peculiar status in contrast to the beast. The American project also assumes moral duties and obligations, also exclusive to a Christian paradigm, which was present in the forming of this nation. The United States, even today, expresses a lingering Christian tradition, the absence of which would leave no reason to hold one model of justice over another. Our justice system still relies today on Christian moral logic, even if people deny it. It should also be known that at the time the Constitution was ratified, many states already had an official Christian denominations. Office holders were required to swear explicitly Christian oaths, including affirming Jesus Christ and the Trinity. The founders knew this. This is why John Adams stated plainly, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. in his letter to the officers of the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Division of the Militia of Massachusetts in 1798. Christianity was assumed to be the ethical backbone of the citizenry whose virtue would sustain the Constitution. These people couldn't have imagined a future America where kids were castrating themselves and men were chest feeding babies. Now, the question is whether or not Christian nationalism is American. I've already established that America was birthed from the loins of Christianity, but what does it mean today to be an American? In a political sense, an American is actively transposing their ethical values into law. Is it legal? Yes. Does it violate the Constitution? No, it doesn't. Is it American? Absolutely. Now, what could my opponent possibly object to with that? Now, he said something along the lines of the First Amendment. He said it doesn't allow you to pass a law, a Christian law. That's actually not true at all. It says Congress shall make no law respecting an established of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That means that the government itself doesn't itself establish a religion. It doesn't say that you can't use your religion and take part in governance, right? So let's read it again. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Well, the exercise of my religion is to vote my ethics into law. That is exercising my religion, in fact. What does that mean? It means that I want a Christian culture to be the norm. I am a cultural nationalist. Is that American? It sure is. Does my opponent prioritize his own set of values and cultural norms? I assume so. Does he have an arbitrary stopping point to make sure that those values and norms never reach the national level? Is it American for one state to become fully Christian in this law? Well, how about 2 states? What about 3 states? Is it still American? How many states are needed, right, to become Christian for it to become un-American? It sounds like the only position that Connor has today to state that Christianity at the national level is un-American is merely the First Amendment. But the First Amendment actually is in favor of my view. The First Amendment merely states that the state itself doesn't establish a religion. It never says, historically this is true, it never states or practices that Christians can't hold positions of government. Now, if a Christian holds a position of government elected by his constituents based on his values, he's going to informing his law and legislation is going to be informed by his Christian ethics. Is that American? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's American. So I'm not sure what Connor's going to say is actually nationalism. Does he believe in secular nationalism? Is that okay? What kind of beliefs are people allowed to have and be elected in the political process and help inform policy? If someone votes against abortion and they're not Christian, is that okay? Because they're going to be informing from their own ethical view. So what makes Christianity a peculiar position that Christian nationalism is un-American, but any other form of nationalism is completely American? We won't have an answer to this. In fact, if he only has the argument of the First Amendment, that's going to be easily destroyed. I hope he has more arguments tonight. With that, I'll forfeit the rest of my time.
All right. Thank you for that opening. And with that, we're going to get into the 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. So we're going to hand the mic back to Counterpoints. Whenever you're ready for your 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttal, I'll start the timer up with your voice. And again, thank you both for being here. And chat, if you want to find the debaters, they're both in the description. Make sure you go sub, and they're both streaming right now. Go sub, go send them money, all of that. All right. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
I will be taking notes, so I'll try to address your points in chronology as briefly as I possibly can, but also concisely. The United States and its inhabitants were originally Christian. I think that's just factual historically. Christendom should be united and advocate for their interest, even up to and including politics. That might be a summary of your position, but I do appreciate you, in my opinion, having a pretty honest definition of Christian nationalism. Humans are endowed in peculiar status compared to other beasts, exclusive to and that some of these beliefs are exclusive to Christianity. I actually wouldn't mind going into like theology or naturalism or the real world or any of that kind of stuff. We don't have to keep it exclusively on politics if you don't want to. I don't deny that the world is reliant on Christian moral logic. I actually think that, one of the unique things about Christianity is turning the other cheek. And I think that it's an interesting moral philosophy that the world would be a better place if most people followed Christian reality or Christian moral prescriptions. My problem is that at the heart of Christianity, I'm a deist. Some of the founding fathers were deists. That's part of the reason why they enshrined the First Amendment. I think that Christian moral logic is great. I think the Christian moral prescriptions are great. I think that the institutions based off of Western philosophy are great. However, I think there's a problem with the divinity of Christ specifically, that at the core of Christianity is the belief that the creator of the universe instantiated himself as a human being in order to communicate with his creation. And I think that a lot of people have problems believing that in a literal sense. As an example for why people have problems believing that, 30% of the country is like irreligious or secular. So roughly 1 in 3 people have no religious affiliation. Also, even though probably 65% of the country identifies as Christian, I think that you'll probably concede that most of them are Creaster Christians. They go on Christmas, they go on Easter, they don't practice the religion, they don't read the Bible, they don't take their faith seriously, they don't actually think about heaven and hell or eternal judgment or revelations or anything like that. It's almost like a cultural aesthetic more than it is like a internal spiritual belief. Now, one of the things that I think that you mentioned was the fact that it was the assumed ethical backbone, and that there were states probably prior to, the Civil War that had Christianity as their explicit religions, and they specifically took oaths and required oaths in order to believe in the Trinity before you could take an oath of office. What I would say is that that's probably no longer possible with the supremacy clause post Civil War, where as a result, like if you're going to make shall make no laws about an establishment of religion or shall make any legislation thereof, I can get into the exact wording, but a Hindu, a Sikh, a Muslim, they're not going to be prohibited from public office. And as a result, you're going to have to make some kind of religious accommodations for them to be able to make oaths within our society, particularly if they're living within our society. Voting your ethics into law, I don't want to disabuse you of that, but I think that your capacity to vote these things in probably ends with the religious beliefs of other people. I'm not Jewish myself, but I've heard it argued that Jewish people believe different things about abortion. I've heard it argued that Muslims believe different things about abortion. And so as a result, as a community of people of multiple faiths, including Christians who have as many denominations as there are sands on the beach, we probably have to come up to some kind of like national consensus about what we think is moral in reference to abortion or gun control or any other hot American issue. So I don't have a problem with you identifying your cultural tribe and advocating in its interest, but I have a different cultural tribe. My cultural tribe is more loose. I'm a civic nationalist. I'm a paperwork nationalist. I think that if you work your job, pay your bills, take care of your family, take care of your community, and then I might have already said this, pay your taxes, pay your bills, and you leave other people alone, that's enough for you to be American. Now, of course, I want you to be a patriot. I want you to care about America. I want you to care about its destiny. I want you to care about your community. I want all those other things. But as far as what I can legalistically prescribe to my fellow Americans, that's all I can legalistically prescribe. Everything else is just cultural pressure. So the same cultural pressure that you want to use in order to advocate for Christianity, I would probably want to use in order to advocate for moral deism and some level of acceptance of the current liberal order. So I'll leave the last 30 seconds for his rebuttal.
All right. Thank you for that. And we're going to hand the mic over to Jim Bob for your 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttal. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
All right. Well, I'd first say that the truth or the coherency of the Trinity is irrelevant to the topic of whether or not the view itself and the practice of the view is American or not. It sounded like you said you hold a general deist view. I would ask you after the 5-minute rebuttal whether or not you think a deist nationalist view is un-American, in which case if a theist view or a Christian view of nationalism is un-American, then so is a deist view. I would ask, when was any of us actually American? It almost sounds like you're saying the history of America, you can't really point in a historical time when people of America were truly American, if you're going to hold that they were either always deist moving into maybe a Trinitarian view or a Protestant view. Still lingering is the Christian paradigm, even today, even among secularists, still appealing to sort of Christian metaphysics and whatnot. So it sounds like you're saying that it was never the case that Americans were truly American because they were deist or they were Christian, and certainly they would want their view to be multiplied from the local level to the city, to the city, to the state, to the state, to the nation, right? That would be the goal. Now, why would someone hold an ethical view and participate in American politics if they're going to stop at an arbitrary point called the nation level? I mean, what do they want? Half the states to follow their ethical system, a third of the states? Where's your line? It sounds completely arbitrary. You said something about a culture. You're a civic nationalist. You appeal to culture. Well, what informs culture? Culture informs politics. Politics informs culture. They kind of go hand in hand. But what informs either of those? Your meta-ethical views. So you say, well, I just want you to do your thing, right? I just want you to live your life. I want you to, support the country, support, a general feeling of community between people. Well, the general community, the general consensus among people is that we still follow a reflection of a Christian church in our justice system. We still reflect Christian meta-ethics, Christian principles, which you agree are probably better for the nation than our nation would be without them. That's probably why you hold to a general deist view. So I'm not sure what you're actually claiming is un-American. Un-American would be a privation of the positive. I'm not even sure what you're saying is American. I'm actually completely lost. To say something is a negation, certainly you'd have a positive ontology of what it means to be American. If it's not Christian, I'm not sure where in time you're going to say, here, that's when we became American. We didn't start American, but now we're American, but we're moving into some un-American territory. To me, this is all meaningless and ambiguous. I want to know from your view, if you're going to claim anything is un-American, I want to know what's American then. What is American to you if Christian nationalism, which would be, I'll just read it again for the audience. Christian nationalism would simply be the belief that Christians should form a people with unified principles and interests who uses the state to further promote their collective interests. You do that already. So do I. So does every other in-group, right, where they share preferences and share ideals. What they do is they vote someone into office, and the person in office becomes the state. That is using the state to promote their collective interests through policy. What is it to be a politically active as an American if it's not actively transposing your ethics into law? What is it to be an American? Is it to be just someone who just watches as other people use their ethical principles and views to promote and write law? Right? Is it only American? Can you only be a Christian in America if you just watch other people's ethical views take precedent over yours? That's completely silly. If you're going to argue for a culture and you're going to argue, well, I wish the whole nation was this culture, then the culture is going to be informed by law, and the law is going to be informed by your theology. It seems to be that I'm just consistent with my view that ultimately it entails some national level of my ethics being deployed. And you seem to be inconsistent where you're like, well, I'm kind of a deist. I like the ideas, but I don't really want to use the gun and I don't want to pass law based on my ethics. I just kind of want to watch the vacuum of power be taken by whoever's going to grab it. I call it's not me, and I certainly hope it's not the Christian. Well, I'm saying the opposite. Affirm your position. Have some conviction counterpoints. What do you want the nation to be? If Christian nationalism is your opposition, what is your alternative? It can't be a negative position. That's a non-position.
All right. Thank you for that. And what we're going to do now is move into the open hour portion where the debaters can cross-examine each other. Just a quick reminder for the chat. Both debaters are in the description. Go sub up, go show some love in their lives right now. Also, if you guys have a question, we have a 30-minute Q&A portion after closing, and super chats, PayPals, and Cash Apps will take priority. And if they fill up the whole 30 minutes, we won't get to the live Q&A in the chat. So if you want a question that you really want answered, make sure you send it through super chat. Other than that, we'll whoever wants to open up the open floor, I'll start the timer with your voice. And again, thank you both for being here tonight.
Yeah, I would love to. And Jim Bob, you actually gave me like another half dozen things to address, and I want to give you something meaty to respond to. So if I won't take 5 minutes, if you'll let me just like blaze through it real quick, and then I'll be happy to just go back and forth. And if you want to interrupt, that's totally fine too. But you said there's no inconsistency. I just want to be a pacifist. That's not true. I love the gun. I love cultural pressure. I love authority. I know that power abhors a vacuum. I would actually argue that I'm probably a Burkean conservative. So you probably just haven't met somebody like me before. I do disagree that the Trinity is irrelevant to whether or not it's American, because something that's American, it has to be American in the past. It has to be American in the present. It has to be American in the future. And so if Christian nationalism falls out of favor, but we're still American, then clearly that can't be the identifying thing of Americanism. I'm not a deist nationalist. I don't think I could be a deist nationalist. There's only 6 of us. So I don't think there's enough of us for us to identify as a collective group and then advocate in our own interest. And if we did, it would be ineffectual. And then what I would say is responding to, you're saying, oh, well, where's this moment in American history where we became American? Well, I would argue that Native Americans were American before America. The whole America came from Amerigo de Vespucci, who was like an Italian cartographer who worked as a part of the colonial project. They're still a part of this land. They're still a part of this history. And
Can we
as a matter
stop
of fact,
there?
even if they're pagan, sure.
Okay. If I somehow converted, if they allowed me to be a Native American, and I reverted not to the current state of Native America being kind of zooed off on a reservation, but a true Native American in action, which would be terrestrial, perhaps active in taking over neighboring tribes. If I started doing that, but I was a Native American, would I be American? Would that be un-American or American?
I mean, well, hold on. So let's differentiate. You actually did have a definition that I liked, that was like American or Americanism. Do you have that definition again?
What it is to be American?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the most basic sense, American is relating to or characteristic of the United States and or its inhabitants, which now you're including native before the sort of colonial approach, the Enlightenment approach to America. You just said you think Native Americans are American, right? Okay. So to be a Native American in the current state, if you say it's un-American for me to be a Christian to deploy my ethics at the national level, but it would be American if I turned into an Indian chief and started completely annihilating a neighboring tribe, I'd be a true American, right?
Well, hold on. So let's differentiate between the Americas that we're talking about, because when we're talking about America or American, I think that what I'm saying, and I'm really not trying to obfuscate, I'm actually trying to use accurate words as much as I can. So American, obviously, when I'm saying that a Native American is an American, I mean that they're a participant on the continent of America. When I'm saying that Christian nationalism, in my opinion, is not American or it's un-American, I would say that it's violating some of the principles that we hold within the United States of America and its
What principle?
heritage and posterity.
Well, the thing is, Native Americans reverting back to a more sort of carnal, war tribe kind of scenario, they would be also violating the same principles. Now, what's the principle?
I would say the
that's being
second
violated?
definition of America, they would be violating it. Yeah.
Okay, so which definition of America are you debating tonight?
Let's do the latter.
Which is what?
The principles, cultures, and ideals of the United States of America.
Okay, so when I vote for someone who holds my Christian paradigm and they win a seat in office, and then their friends gain a seat in office, and we start to manipulate legislation to fit our ethical paradigm, where is that violating the thing you just defined?
No, that's an excellent question. So I would say where it starts to violate it is obviously the Constitution of the United States. So I'm sure, as you're aware, we have the Bill of Rights, we have limits to it, or the federal government has limits to its power. And not just that, we are expected to afford these rights, not just to citizens, we're expected to afford these rights to people in general. So if you pass legislation that violates the Constitution or violates previous legislation without first repealing it and then placing it back, then I would view that as un-American.
Okay, is it American to change the Constitution?
No.
It is American or un-American?
No, it's perfectly American to
Okay.
amend the Constitution.
Okay, so if I am a Christian and I use the political system to amend the Constitution in such a way where the thing you cite as a violation is no longer definitionally a violation, that's American, right?
Yeah, I would say so. But I would
That's the
also
debate.
say, okay, well, don't declare victory so early, King.
I'm just
So
saying.
what I would say is that there are plenty of flavors of Christian nationalists. You are not the only Christian nationalist. And that there are Christian nationalists who believe that the Constitution itself is a pro-degenerate, pro-libertine, pro-liberal document. And as a result, Christianity effectively needs to degrade and eliminate the entire American project. Effectively, the past 275 years were a mistake. And what needs to happen instead is that they need to abolish this and reinstitute Christian monarchy. And I would view that as un-American, contrary to the American project. And that's also a flavor of Christian nationalism.
Well, as you just said, if I use the current system and all the voting practices and all the proper techniques to then amend something that renders the actual political process and its ontology to something else, you said that's completely consistent with Americanism, right? So all you're saying is, well, if it's this thing, it's no longer what it used to be. But the problem is what I asked you to concede to, which you did, is, isn't it American for us to use the current model to change the current model? That's part of the American project.
You're not going to be able to. And I think if you're being honest, you know that you're not going to be
The question isn't whether or not I'm able to. The question is
Yes,
logically. Hold on. The question is whether or not, if it were the case, would it be American? The answer is yes, it would be American.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's play with this idea. As we already discussed, the definition of America is basically the past, I don't know, 275, arguably 400 years of history in which the American project was formed. And it's the history of its peoples, plural, but also unified as a people within the United States of America. And it's also its values. Now, the values is enshrined within the United States of America. I think you could probably agree with historically was a liberal and libertarian project in the classical sense baked into our culture. And so while I will admit that it is logically possible that maybe enough Christian nationalists would be able to repeal and replace the entirety of the Constitution, if a third of the population is already secular, if probably half of the remaining Christian identifying population are Creaster Christians who do not take their faith seriously, then obviously this isn't within the realm of possibility. So why the fuck would you appeal to that?
Counterpoints. Do you understand the difference between whether or not you think something could happen versus if it did happen, would it be consistent with the question, which is, would it still be American if it did happen?
Yeah, but also at this point, I'm saying that your worldview is effectively delusional.
Wait, it's delusional to think that Christians could actually manipulate the current form of the United States and the Constitution. It's irrational to believe that the Constitution as it is now could change. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying it's delusional to believe that you could get a one-to-one Christian nationalist wipe of the Constitution of the United States.
The question isn't whether or not you think it's possible. The question is if
yes, it is.
Were,
Dude, number one, listen, man, I'm fucking 40 years old. You don't have to tell me what
I'm 44. I'm older than you.
Okay, you don't have to tell me what we can and can't talk about.
I'm making a distinction.
I'm a free American. I'm a free American.
You sound like a boomer.
Whatever the fuck I want. So don't say,
I'm not arguing what you can and can't talk about, dude.
We're not talking about this because you know what I want to do at that point? I want to talk about that. So don't tell me what we can and can't talk about.
Is there a difference between what's logically possible and whether or not that's consistent with the topic of the debate and what you think could happen? Are those two different things?
Sure. But there are plenty of things that are logically possible that are irrelevant. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand.
So at what point do you deem something irrelevant? When you think it can't happen? Is that it?
Yeah.
Cool. I think it can happen. Who wins?
Me, because I have statistics in order to back up my perspective.
Okay, cool.
So no, hold on. How are you going to deal with the fact? So let's say, and by the way, you haven't necessarily staked out a full position on this, on whether or not you think that the past 275 years, as a matter of fact, let me ask you a direct question. Was the establishment of the United States of America as a liberal or libertarian project, was that a mistake?
A libertarian project?
Yeah.
Like, are you talking about like old classical liberalism? Libertarian today would be a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, like individual rights,
If
hostility to monarchy, the
if
Bill of
you're
Rights, all that kind of stuff. Is that a
a little,
mistake in your
I would
mind?
say I would say it was incomplete. I would say that resting on some sort of evidentialist, classical foundationalist approach that's nebulous, that says, well, there's a general creator God. I think that is missing the target a little bit. And I also believe that crafting the society based on rights as the highest virtue. Now, I could argue that early on, the concept of rights, you wouldn't separate them from duties at that time. The early Americans, the founding fathers, they would never conceive of a society that would lean so heavily toward entitlements and lean so far away from obligations. Those used to go hand in hand theologically. We could probably agree with that. Now, I would just say the mistake would be leaning into my rights about above all, liberty above all, because from a Christian perspective, I think it's actually duty that creates beauty, aesthetic, responsibility, good fathering, good parenting, good family, and great societies, right? I think that's what makes a great military as well. And so from that perspective, yes. But the question tonight, Connor, is it American? So let me ask you a really basic question. Is it American for a Nazi to be voted into office?
Yeah, if it's following the legal processes of representative democracy.
Okay, so it's American for a Nazi to be voted into office. Is it American for 50 Nazis to be voted into office?
This is going to be interesting. Once the Nazis, because I'm following you through the hypothetical, okay? Nazis are, I hope we can both agree, philosophically fascist. And I'm not saying that to be cute. I'm not saying that to morally impugn anybody. I'm saying they're political corporatist and flexible authoritarians, meaning that they treat the nation state as a unified body, and they believe with flexible authoritarianism, they believe that you achieve power however possible and you maintain power however possible. So the reason why I would differentiate between one Nazi and 50 Nazis is because once 50 Nazis are in power and they have the collective ability to start usurping the Republic of the United States through violating law, I would say that once they start violating due process, republicanism, liberalism, rights, that's when it becomes un-American.
Okay, can I ask you if the founding fathers, in a movement away from, let's say a movement away from British monarchy, if the people moving away from the control of England were to establish a new nation, a new identity by any means possible, is that fascist?
Sorry, one more time, just because the chat popped up and I read it like an idiot. Go. Sorry,
When,
one more time.
When a group of men, let's say in history, move away from the British monarchy to create their own society, if they did that by any means possible, are they fascist?
No.
Why not?
Because fascist is a codified ideology. It's political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism. So if those men themselves, so for instance, like George Washington is not a fascist. As a matter of fact, George Washington is explicitly not a fascist because he had the opportunity to seize power and maintain power. And he realized that there were things more important than power. And so he conceded power.
Okay, so let's swap the Nazis with Christians here, because I wanted to see which kind of worldviews you'll allow into office and at what threshold you'll determine it's un-American. If a bunch of Christians,
I'm not trying to skip ahead. I will answer any question you ask. Okay. However, I will say it will be the same threshold. So I have no problems with Christians in being office. I have no problems with them voting their conscience.
What's the threshold? What's the threshold?
The threshold is basically when you start violating the Constitution, the representative process, the legal process. All that
okay, stop there. Stop there. You said just a couple of minutes ago that Christians, it would be American for Christians to change the Constitution, the thing that you're using as a standard of violating to determine it's un-American, but it's also American to change the Constitution, which is a violation of the Constitution. That's a contradiction.
No, it's not, because there's
Yes,
a
it
way
is.
to. No, no, it's not.
I'll
Stop
give you the
telling
P
me
and not
what
P.
shit is.
Do
I
you know what a
shit
contradiction is? Shit.
Yeah,
Do you know what a contradiction is?
Yeah, it's where one statement contradicts another statement where they have
Yeah.
opposite meanings that don't work, don't vibe.
Okay.
Amending the Constitution is not the same as overthrowing the Constitution or violating the Constitution. We can agree with that, right?
No, because here's why I don't agree
Amending
with
the
that.
Constitution
I'll
is the
want me to
same
answer.
as
You asked me a
violating the
question.
Constitution.
You asked me a question.
Well,
so.
yeah, but it's kind of annoying when you make a statement and then you say, that's correct, right? No, just let the statement stand.
I don't care what you find annoying. So here's what's
Obviously.
so, okay? Here's what your view just stated, right? You said, I don't have a problem with Christians or any other worldview taking office so long as they don't violate the Constitution. However, it's completely American for those people to take office and change the Constitution such that it's no longer a violation, right?
Yeah, amending the Constitution is not the same as violating the Constitution. There's no contradiction here.
That means that your standard for un-American could just change as long as we just change the Constitution, dude.
Yeah, do you know how the amendment process works?
The process is irrelevant to the point. It can happen.
No, it's not. It's actually perfectly relevant to the point.
Can you amend the Constitution?
Yes.
Can you amend a Constitution in such a way where the thing you were previously calling a violation of the Constitution is no longer a violation of the Constitution?
Of course, alcohol being a perfect example.
Then your standard for saying Christian nationalism, the threshold at which it becomes un-American, it becomes suddenly American so long as they change the thing that you're calling a violation. That's it, dude. Do you want to change the topic of the debate? Because it's over.
No, it's not. And you continually asserting that doesn't do anything for anybody who has an IQ above 80. It's actually kind of cringe. So anyways, amending the Constitution is different than violating the Constitution. And by the way, this is part of the reason why I brought up viability, because what's so fucking cringe about this is you're saying in a hypothetical world, okay, it is actually logically possible that China, because let's just blame the Democrats. The Democrats have lax immigration policies. 330 million Chinese, as a matter of fact, let's make it 660 million. 660 million Chinese people could fly over to the United States and they could be granted citizenships through some like passe thing. And then as a result, they could vote in a brand new constitution. They could amend the Constitution. They could make the Constitution communist. They could say that we believe in the decommodification of basic human needs and workers owning the means of production. But you and I would both logically agree that turning the United States communist would be a violation of the original spirit of the Constitution of the United States, which included things like classic liberalism and individual rights and all that kind of shit. So there's no contradiction here. Anybody who has an above 80 IQ knows what the fuck is going on, and you declaring yourself correct is cringe. Stop doing it.
Okay, so again, there is a contradiction, and it's simple.
There's no contradiction here.
I just let you talk. I just let you violation. Hey, Spurgy, I just let you talk. Okay, just calm down.
Yeah, but you're just repeating something that's incorrect.
No, I'm gonna tell you. It's not for you. It's for the audience. Obviously, you don't get it, but the audience can get it. So, if the Constitution right now, as it is the reason why you're saying Christians at some threshold, if they violate the current Constitution, you're saying then it's un-American. But you also say it's fully American to change the Constitution in a way where there's no more violation that you're pointing to. So you now have to create a new violation because there's a new Constitution.
Do you think that? Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll let you go. So I'll explain it. Okay. The American project is predicated on republicanism, which is representative democracy. Our founding fathers looked throughout the entirety of history and they said, wow, we got monarchy, we got imperialism, we got dictatorship, we got direct democracy, we got a whole host of different governmental systems. We need to create something that we think will stand the test of time. And what they liked about republicanism, specifically Roman republicanism, is that they had representative democracy and the rule of law, where effectively you could establish a series of laws through a legislature of the elites that then created technocratic policies. But God forbid that those policies became no longer morally permissible or popular or whatever, then there was a high threshold amendment process in which a large swath of the population could vote in enough representatives that they could amend the Constitution. Therefore, amending the Constitution is perfectly American. However, thank you. However, if you went in And let's just say that you had an entire host of authoritarians. Let's say that we brought in 600 million fascists, and they, through electoral processes, abolished the Constitution of the United States, and they created a fascist state. Then I think that you, being a person of sound mind, judge, and character, can agree that the fascist nation, while it was achieved through democratic processes, was not in the same spirit as the American project. Yes? Logically, obviously so.
Nothing you said addressed the contradiction I presented. Now let me talk.
Actually perfectly addressed.
No,
it.
no, you totally.
Move on
You
to something else. We can.
no. Look, I'll make it simpler for you. Okay. Let's say you're a child.
I'm a very intelligent person.
I
understand what
you
you're
know
saying
that
perfectly.
Okay, cool. So let's say there's a. Let's say, is it American for women to vote?
I mean, now it is.
Is it American to not have women vote?
It was in the past. That's not contradictory.
So it's American to have women vote, and it's American to have women to take their vote, right?
I don't think we ever took away their vote. I think we just never granted it to them in the first place.
If we took their vote, would that be American?
No.
It wouldn't be. Why wouldn't that be American?
Because the whole argument for...
You said you were smart.
I don't know why you think it's funny. I'm about to explain.
I think you're funny.
Okay, thank you. So, the reason why slavery was abolished, the reason
I said voting.
why...
Women voting. Stay focused. Stay focused.
Jim Bob, I am
Connor,
perfectly coherent.
Focus.
Incapable of following the narrative.
Address women voting.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Who was granted the right to vote first? Black women or excuse me, black men or women?
I'm not actually sure, but not all men had the right to vote
that
either.
Was the point I was going to make. So why don't you shut up?
Yeah, but not all men, dude. Not all white men had the vote either. So it's a moot point because the question isn't who got it first. The question, stop. The question is simple. Is it American to give the women the vote? You said yes. Is it American to then remove it? And you said no, but you can't tell me why.
I was about to, but you interrupted me.
You're giving me a story about slavery. Talk voting, dude. Focus.
Were slaves capable of voting?
Probably not. What's the point?
Allow me to explain it to you.
Explain why it's un-American for us right now to repeal the 19th Amendment. Go.
I will.
Don't give me history. Don't give me history. Just tell me why it's un-American. Speak directly, dude.
I do speak directly.
Then answer directly like a grown man. You said you're 40. You said you're 40. You can't answer a direct question.
Just shut up. It's very easy.
Obfuscate.
This isn't an obfuscation. Stop.
Go ahead and don't answer the question.
I'm waiting for you to shut the fuck up so I can answer your question. Okay, perfect. So, when we first started this country, only white men of good character who owned property could vote. Once we abolished slavery, the franchise was extended to black men before it was extended to women. In the early 20th century, we extended it to women. The reason why we did that was because within our founding documents, we basically established that all men are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, the ability to blah, 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 right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right?
I'm hearing the blah, blah, blah part clearly.
Okay, I'll pull it up and read it if you want me to, Jim.
Arrive at the point.
Fuck you.
You can't answer, dude.
No, I'm answering it. Anybody with an
no one cares about your history lesson.
Knows the
what
answer,
was my question?
Bob.
What was my
Everybody
question?
already knows the answer.
What was my question?
At it, and then you interrupted again because you're a twat.
What was my question?
Your question was, why is it un-American to remove women's right to vote?
Today, tell me why.
Because we hold these truths to be self-evident that, we basically could lay out the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. And as a result, we would say, are women part of mankind? Are they endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights? And if they are, then shouldn't they be entitled to the same rights as men?
No.
And that's how suffragettes successfully argued for their right to vote.
Really? So,
yes.
So by the way, certain inalienable rights doesn't tell you which rights those are.
I mean, I think
you're just including, that's called a word concept fallacy. You're just saying, look, they use the word rights. That means anything deemed a right, they have the right, right? That's not true.
I mean, I think we can literally just read the preamble and then they start talking about the
We're
inalienable
created
right.
equal from a Christian paradigm. We're created equal in value under God, right? So the term like women's rights, it doesn't follow that anything a man has an obligation to do or has the right to do because of their obligation that a woman also does. For instance, like women aren't drafted, right?
Sure.
Okay. So is that un-American?
Is women not being drafted un-American?
Uh-huh.
No.
That's a contradiction.
No, you just saying the word contradiction doesn't do
You're
anything.
inconsistent, bro. You just said
No, I'm not. Do
Okay.
you agree that men and women are different?
Yeah, that's why we have different obligations from a Christian paradigm. From your paradigm, you don't have that distinction.
No, I do think that men and I'm not some fucking soy lib, bro. So chill with the talking points. So, anyways, when it comes to women, do you know how many men participate in actual military service?
No.
Okay, it's around 3% of the population. Do you know how many women participate in childbearing?
And
It's 85%. So what I would say is, since we're different in obligations, we're different. We're not only different in like rights, we're also different in duties and obligations.
That's great. So that's actually a really interesting point. When it comes to voting, would you say when a bunch of men vote, by voting, they're agreeing to not collectivize and overthrow the current standardized and monopolized force?
Yeah.
Okay. So you agree that when men get together, they vote and they go, listen, by me voting, I'm agreeing, I'm forfeiting my ability to collectivize and overthrow, even if we lose, probably, to just start a revolution, right?
Yeah, you're abdicating your right to violence.
Can you tell me what women are forfeiting when they vote?
They're abdicate. Wait. So you're saying that men are abdicating their right to violence, and you're saying what? Women don't have the capacity for violence?
I'm asking you if men forfeit their violence, collective violence, in the act of voting. It's an exchange. Here's my vote, and I won't do stuff. What are women forfeiting?
I'm forfeiting my right to violence. As a man, you're forfeiting your right to violence, but women
is it gossip? Are they just going to promise not to gossip or
no?
Nag?
No, listen, I'm trying to steel man your position. It's just kind of a weird question. I would say that I think some women, especially after firearms, are capable of violence. I'll agree they're not capable of the same level of violence as men are. But then I would also say that they're probably abdicating maybe like some level of bodily autonomy, where their rights to like procreation, the way that they see fit, is probably forfeited to the state because the state can dictate how they procreate.
Well, I think women's leverage, this is parallel to the topic, but I'll entertain it because I find it interesting, is that I think men leverage with violence. Women leverage their birth.
Yeah, their reproductive capacity.
Sex, right? So they're the gatekeepers of sex. But it's true still that men, if they wanted to, could take that also.
Sure. But this actually goes back to a 2,500-year-old conversation. I think it's between Socrates and another person, where they basically said democracy and the abdication of violence to the state is effectively the weak pooling their political resource in order to subdue the strong and tyrannical.
Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that people, like for pragmatic reasons, don't want to be the ruler, and they like a structured, ordered society, even if they complain about some of it. They like that it's managed and ordered, and they also like the assumption, whether it's true or not, that there is at least a standardized system of force and governance that they don't have to like figure out and constantly debate, and they just get to live their life. So, I think that looking at that, given that the topic of the debate is this system that we have included in what's dictated or it's called American, and we both agree, yes, American culture, American sports, there's all these things that's called American, and in politics, we both agree the political structure and its history is what we call American. And so the question comes back to, at what point does an ideology, in this case Christianity, become un-American, and I'll just highlight again that you said it becomes un-American when it violates this amendment or this notion that's written. But as I said, well, it's not un-American to change that notion, is it? It's totally American to change that. So that what that means is it necessitates a new thing to violate for you to say it's un-American. So if the rule there that I cross and go, I transgress against the rule, and you say at that breaking that rule, then you're un-American. And I say, what if I just use the American system to change that rule so it doesn't exist? Connor, you're going to have to say, well, now I guess there's a new rule then, because that's no longer the rule that determines you're un-American, right? So I'm asking, what's the new rule? What's the new rule?
Can I use an example? Because I don't know what degree of Christian literalism you're on. I don't know if you think that the Old Testament is purely literal. I don't know if you know that believe that the New Testament is purely literal. I don't know what you believe about like rabbinical temple law or whatever. But there's obviously like different levels of adherence with Christianity, right? And so, as an example, there is let's go with prohibition of tattoos as an example. Paul prohibits the prohibition of tattoos, okay, amongst Christians. And so, as a result, let's say that Christian nationalists get into the levels of government and they prohibit tattoos. Well, then under our current system, people would sue and say, well, this is freedom of expression, freedom of conscience. I don't follow your religious dictates, et cetera, et cetera. I think that since, just using this as an example, you believe that Christianity is God's law. God's law is supreme to man's law. And therefore, we should amend the Constitution to allow this exception where God's law is supreme. Am I wrong?
Well, the question is still unanswered, right? You steel manning the position a little bit. I'm just saying, from your model,
I'm use an example.
Hold on. When you throw in the red flag as the referee into the game and say, violation, and I go, what's the violation? You go, traveling, and I go, what's traveling? You say, this amendment says this, you can't violate this. And I go, that's interesting. The American project includes changing the rules of the game. And you say, yes, indeed, it does, Coach Jim Bob. And I go, cool. Well, let's say I use the rules and I change the rules. I use the rules to change the rules. The thing you're throwing a flag in the game, traveling, it no longer is a rule. So now you need a new rule to say it's not American, right? So what's the new rule?
You don't have enough players to change the rule.
That, dude, unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
No, it's actually completely
it's just unbelievable. It's like talking to a broken AI. That's what it's like. No,
it's not. It's actually directly responding to
I don't have enough people to change the rules.
It's responding to exactly to what you're saying. Okay. I already answered it with the fascist example. I already answered it with the communist example. I've already illustrated it with this tattoo example. Okay. How these rules would be in conflict. And necessarily you would probably have to concede, okay, yeah, that is traveling. That is a violation of the rules of set. But you're saying in a hypothetical universe.
No, it's not hypothetical.
The rules of the game. Well, not only have you not changed the rules of the game in our current moment, I'm telling you, you do not have the capacity to change the rules of the game. Did we change the game? You're acting like, oh, well, we say we can change the rules. That does nothing to address
what's an amendment?
What's an amendment? It's a change to the Constitution of the United States.
You fucking
All
idiot.
you're doing is you're illustrating the point that I've already articulated.
So you can't change the rules, but an amendment is the changing of the rules?
I just said that.
Yeah, you can't hypothetically. Oh, Jim Bob, you're being so hypothetical now, talking about changing the rules. The Constitution and its amendments are the changing of the rules.
And what I'm saying is that you have a rule set that contradicts the current rule set. You do not.
It's called the change.
Probabilistically will not have the political capacity to change the rules. It's actually a very simple argument.
The question of whether you think something has the capacity to happen is irrelevant to the hypothetical to test your consistency. Do you understand this? I thought you were 40 and smart.
Yeah, sure. I'll explain it again because apparently your audience is fucking retarded. So I'll explain it again. Let's say that 3/4 of the population. No, this is perfectly analogous and it's perfectly relevant.
Gosh.
You can keep being condescending, but it's perfectly relevant to what we're talking
condescending? That's hilarious.
Yes. 3/4 of the population decides that fascism is based. Okay. Good. They vote in fascism, political corporatism, flexible authoritarianism. they change the rules of the game.
Mhm.
Do you think it's somehow a contradiction to point out that the new rules of the game that has been passed through the amendment process, it's been passed through the rules of the game, but the new rules of the game are clearly spiritually violative of the original rules of the game?
Spiritually wow, dude, spiritually violative.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how
Do you
you
think
measure that, sir?
libertarianism and fascism are? Do you think like
I asked you a clarifying question. You
Sure, go
used the
ahead.
term spiritually violative. Please
Yep.
tell me your standard and measuring tool for that.
What I would say is that you can kind of get a vibe of
A vibe?
Yeah, don't worry. I got more words.
Did
for
you just
Jim
say a
Bob.
vibe?
Yeah,
All
based
right.
off of a series of criteria that inform that thing. So, for instance, libertarianism
Do you have a
and liberalism
vibometer?
is clearly, Jim Bob, stop being incredulous. This is
Do you
actually
have a
very easy to
vibometer?
understand. This is actually very easy to understand. Do you? As
I'm
a matter of
not
fact,
getting a
I'll
vibe
go. I'll
from
go
you.
ahead and ask you another question since you're incredulous. Do you think that
I don't know.
liberalism and fascism are compatible?
I'm not sure. I'm not picking up a vibe yet. I gotta wait.
Okay. Besides being a smartass, do you think liberalism, an ideology predicated on individual rights, is compatible with an ideology that emphasizes authoritarianism and political corporatism, arguably collectivism?
Well, there might be a paradox, much like the paradox of tolerance in there, but that's not all paradoxes are contradictions, and it's irrelevant to the point of the debate, which is
You just saying irrelevant repeatedly has nothing to do with this fucking
it's irrelevant.
conversation.
It's a red herring, bro.
I
How
think
is it
you're just
relevant?
throwing out debate terms without even
Tell me,
knowing
okay, I'll
what the
let
fuck they mean.
you tell me how it's relevant.
How it's relevant is I've already articulated this to you. I'm actually having like difficulty understanding how you're not understanding. If you use the game, let's go with the games analogy. I think that
Yeah,
was
let's do
perfect.
that.
Okay. Let's say we're playing soccer. Okay. We use our feet
Gay.
in order to, I know it's gay, but anyways, liberalism is kind of gay too. We're
agree
playing
there.
soccer. Okay. And then we stop playing soccer and we say, hey, you know what? We decided as a soccer club that we can vote on changing the rules whenever we want to. And so as a result, we no longer have 2 goals. We no longer have a ball on the ground. We no longer have a 100-yard field. We actually just have like metal crowbars and we just beat the fuck out of each other in the center of the field. Do you think it's strange to say that beating the fuck out of each other in the middle of the field with crowbars is different substantively from playing the game of soccer?
I would say, yeah, at that point, the referent that you knew soccer to be is no longer the same thing. And even if I agree that the reference change, the question isn't whether or not something can change and be called the new thing. The question is whether or not the current processes allow you to change soccer. And it sounds like you agree that through the American project, it's completely American to change the Constitution. Yes.
Yeah, we've
right?
looped on this like 5 times.
Okay. So let me just do it maybe and try to in premise form. If it's true that it's completely American to change the Constitution and it's un-American to violate something that's in the Constitution, then all you have to do is change the thing that you're calling a violation and it's no longer un-American. Easy syllogism.
Okay.
You want to contend with either any of those premises?
I've contended with it 5 times. I think you're being obtuse on purpose.
Okay, so premise 1 again. It's American.
I don't need it again. I heard it and I understand it. And I've said it back to you 7 different ways.
Okay. It's American to follow the processes to amend the Constitution. It's un-American from your view to violate the current Constitution. It's American to change the thing that you call a violation. It's no longer un-American because there's no longer a violation. It's simple.
Okay. At which point I move to whether or not your political project is possible. Maybe it's possible, but it's not probable. And then you go, oh, well, that's totally changing the dynamics of the conversation. And I think that's very
Wait,
dumb.
are you saying that it's impossible to change the Constitution?
Do you think if I was a fascist,
I asked
and
you a
said,
question.
What if? No. I'm going to go on an analog. I already told you that I'd already.
I just
answered
asked you,
7
do you
different
think
times.
it's possible
I'll
to
answer with
change
an
the
analog.
Constitution?
No,
Yes or no?
if I'm a
You're
fascist,
a fucking weasel, dude.
no, I'm not. I've actually.
You are a
answered you
fucking
directly
bearded weasel. You don't even
dozens of
deserve
times.
that
No, you're a
beard.
pussy. You're a pussy.
I'm the one. You're the one who can't answer a question.
You're ignoring everything I've said.
Is
So
it
I'm gonna go
possible
ahead
to
and
change the
repeat back to
Constitution?
you.
Is
I'm gonna
it
repeat back to
possible
you
to change the
exactly-
Constitution?
Obviously.
Okay, if it's possible to change the Constitution, why is it an unlikely hypothetical, sir?
Because you do not have Christian nationalism is not politically relevant enough for you to change the rules of the game.
I said logically possible. Why is it logically impossible?
It's logically possible that you
Great,
could
that's the debate,
evangelize-
dude. Again,
potentially evangelize to the
did you not know who you were debating tonight?
increasingly secularizing population of the United States in order to get a political majority, in order to become a Christian theocratic nation. It's technically, physically possible.
Cool.
It's on the likelihood of less than 1%.
Cool. So, anyway, is it un-American to vote for anti-abortion policy?
No.
Okay. Is it American to vote for compelled welfare if you're Christian? Like a Christian coming to the table and saying, we want welfare.
No.
It's not.
You live in a republic. You're allowed to vote your conscience.
Okay. But it is un-American to use the American project, which is completely legal, to change the Constitution.
No one said that.
Yes, you did.
No, I haven't, Jim Bob.
Yes, you did. I'll tell you why. Watch.
I don't want to listen to why.
No.
I want to repeat back to you the way
I'm going to
that you're
tell you
saying it
why.
to
No,
me
you don't
because it's
weasel.
fucking stupid.
You don't weasel out of this. You said that. Here's how you said that. I
Just say
said
debate terms, bro. You're not even that good at this.
Look, your tattoo is so gay. You should wear long sleeves. Listen.
My
So
tattoo
if
is
it's
fucking awesome,
if it's the case, Connor,
Oh.
that changing the Constitution, you said is American, but I said
We've done this
changing-
7 times. by
Dude,
the way.
listen to me. Listen to me. Changing the Constitution is totally American. You said yes. Changing the Constitution, which would include taking the women's right to vote. That's changing the Constitution. You said in premise 1, in P, it's American
and then I
to do
explained
that.
how it's
And then you said it's un-American.
inconsistent with
That
the
is a
founding
P-
documents
that-
of the United States of
that is a
America, but you've
P-
ignored it because you're
That
a
is a
pain in my
P, not
ass.
P. That is a P, not P.
Okay. I'm going to do what you just did, and I want you to respond to me the way that you want me to respond to you. Okay. Is the amendment process in the United States of America American?
Yeah.
So let's say a bunch of fascists voted
What's a
in
fascist?
an amendment to a fascist is a political corporatist and flexible authoritarian. I could
I
explain
don't.
it to you in greater
I'm not
detail
sure
if
what that. You got to get more rigorous with that. I'm not sure what you
Okay.
mean by that.
Okay, political corporatism. The nation is the body of people. The state is the government.
Okay, so is there a ruling party under this view?
That's irrelevant to my definition. I would like to continue to tell you my definition.
Oh, is it proprietary or you're just
No,
making
it's
one
from
up?
Giovanni Gentile. It's from the guy who created fascism.
Oh, okay. So what does he define it as again?
Political corporatism,
Mm-hmm.
flexible authoritarianism.
Flexible meaning it could be light or heavy.
Can I explain it?
Sure.
Okay. So political corporatism. The nation state, nation is the people, state is the government, is not a being that it's not a thing that should be at war with itself. Core is the word for body. Okay. And so it should be like a body where the state is the brain, and then the member organs of the nation should be analogized to their functions. So law enforcement should be white blood cells. The economy should be a heart. The hospices and the hospitals should be a liver. And so you analogize it as political corporatism, where you analogize the nation state to being a body, and you try to advocate for the holistic health of the body. Have I lost you?
Well, it's poetic. I like poetry too, but you said the body, the nation is the people, and the state is something else.
No, it's one entity, but typically the state is thought of as the brain.
Okay, but isn't the state also people?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, who gets to be in the state? American, to be American is to say you have an ethical view and you could bring your ethical view into the state position, right?
That this is not anywhere near our narrative through line. Can you ask me the question again?
If a fascist who thinks he's truly a fascist, he can get elected, right?
Yeah.
Okay. A Nazi can get elected. That's totally American. Fascist elected, Nazi elected, Christian elected, right?
Adolf Hitler was appointed chancellor through democratic means.
Okay. So you could go through the American project and actually produce through some form of maybe leaning a little bit further through some changes toward a direct democracy. Isn't that American?
I would argue no.
Okay. At what point is the people voting through their representative republic altering the system to be a little bit more narrowly direct democracy? At what threshold is it un-American?
Well, okay. So actually trying to answer your question without being a smartass.
Yeah, right.
I think the founding fathers had a vision for what they thought would stand the test of time.
Man,
And
I wish you would answer a fucking question.
I would like the opportunity to finish a fucking sentence, Jim Bob. Thank you.
You're such a
They
prick.
actually abhorred direct democracy. They did
Who
not
cares
like
what?
the masses.
Who cares? I asked you.
This is the entire conversation, you
Fuckhead.
fucking idiot. The entire conversation is
what did
what's
I
American
ask
and what's
you?
not American. So
What-
if you come up with an idea that is violative of what the founding fathers thought was going to stand the test of time,
The
then it would
founding-
clearly be un-American, you dipshit.
So the founding fathers were what?
American. And the founders of our nation
Christian?
and the founders of our country and the
Were they
people
Christian?
who projected
Were they
politics out
Christian?
1,000 years.
Were they
you
Christian?
condescending dipstick.
Were they Christian?
Some of them were. Some of them were deists.
Oh, so still a belief, right? So do you believe is deist nationalism un-American?
It's
The
not
debate
even
again.
possible.
The debate over again.
You
Oh!
are you,
Do it!
Jim? That's not even. Okay,
It's not possible for a deistic
national.
national. Yeah,
You know what deism is?
yeah.
Okay, what's deism?
It's like a general view of God. It's still a belief in God. So I asked you, is it un-American to have a
Do you know what
deistic?
nationalism is?
You define it. It's your debate. Go ahead.
Okay, I would say that nationalism is typically like It's actually, it fits into your definition perfectly, by the way.
It was
It's
your
identifying-
definition.
It's identifying a tribe of people and then advocating in their political interest.
Yeah, no shit. So when they established the
So
United,
why is deist nationalism very retarded?
listen, counterpoints. Listen, do you believe that a group of men who held Christian and deistic and Protestant views formulated the conception of this Enlightenment project called America?
Yeah.
Okay. Was that the belief that deists and Christians form a people with a unified principle and interest who uses the state to further promote their collective interest? Did they do that?
Yeah.
That's the debate.
No, it's
The
not.
founding fathers were Christian nationalism by your definition. You know whose definition this is? Ask Speakeasy. Yours.
No, Jim Bob, here's the problem though, because
You
you're kind
dumb
of like
schmuck.
you're going all over the place and you're kind of hurting yourself.
I'm not all over the place. I'm centered
Yeah, you
in
are.
your chest,
Yeah,
and
are.
you're bleeding
Hold on.
out.
Are deists don't believe in Christ as the Messiah.
I swapped Christianity with deism because you said,
Okay.
can you have deistic nationalism? And you said, that doesn't make sense. I just
There's
told you
not
that
enough
makes sense.
Okay, but nationalism includes a level of exclusivity definitionally. So
Were the
deistic
founding fathers
nationalism-
exclusive?
Deistic nationalism would exclude Christians. It would exclude Muslims. It would exclude Hindus and Sikhs and Jews. So that definition and those usages of words don't work. So
well,
anyway,
no, as Adam
hold on, hold on.
said, it was
I'm
exclusive.
going to show how silly your argumentation is. Okay,
What
so
argument?
your argumentation was that because deists and Christians of varied sects came together in order to form the United States of America, it was therefore Christian nationalism. My question to you is, are deists Christian?
No, I know. I didn't say
Obviously.
I didn't say therefore it's Christian nationalism. I said therefore you actually at least have to hold to deistic nationalism.
Once again, you're misusing the words.
No, I'm not, dude. If a nation is established,
Nationalism means exclusion.
okay, cool. Let's do it. Let's do it so you can follow. I wish I had crayons. Do you believe theistic nationalism is un-American?
Yeah.
So when in America, where's the referent for America without theism?
I mean, I would say at the founding, theistic nationalism was relatively speaking prohibited at the federal level.
No. Hold on a second. I need you to answer this question. What is American? What is American if it's not theistic?
I would say in governance, it's secular.
No. At the founding, we're talking about the founding of the nation.
I would still say
what
the
is
founding was
American?
relatively no, because the whole point of the Enlightenment
Unbelievable.
rationality behind not legislating specific like religion at the federal level was
did.
because they already knew that they were going to have a plurality of faiths.
No,
Now, those plurality of faiths might have been
Yes, it was a
Christian
compromise.
sects.
It was a compromise. Yeah, it was a compromise. So
Okay, but
we
they already
agree.
knew that there were heretical deists.
Wait,
among their
hold on. Was the founding, right? When you go from the colonies to the states, the compromise, you agree, the compromise wasn't about secularists. It was about deists and different denominations of Christians, right?
Yes.
So, okay, listen to this. The founding of the United States and all of its language and all of its concerns and all of its compromises was well within and exclusive to a theistic belief system and not for a non-theistic belief system.
No.
Yes, it was.
Then how do you include deists in the very sentences that you just used?
I said theistic. Are deists also theists?
No.
So they believe a belief in God is not a belief in God.
No, deist. Okay, the actual difference is that theism believes in a specific God. Deism believes in like a general, incomprehensible Spinoza's natural God.
Okay, so you think if a nation is formed on a Spinoza's God, that's also un-American?
If it was saying to the exclusion of all others, yeah. Like, so for instance, hold on, let me try to describe deistic nationalism real quick because it doesn't make sense. So nationalism implies a level of exclusivity. So what if we were a deist nationalist country, okay, then what that would mean is we wouldn't accept Christians. We would believe that Christians were heretical, delusional freaks who presumed way too much about understanding the nature of God. We wouldn't accept Muslims or Sikhs or Hindus or Jews because they all have specific theistic things, because nationalism in and of itself means a nation. It means a people. So if you say word plus people, then that word should be describing all of the people within your tribe.
Okay, cool. So my question to you then would be, at the founding of the United States, with all of the documentation and all of the speeches and everything included in the processes, can you tell me when and how you know true Americanism existed independent of deism or theism?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it was the founding of the nation. I would say it was probably formed in like Tun Tavern in 1775. It was probably birthed during the Revolution. I would say that's when Americanism as a culture probably first started.
So you're saying the ultimate start of America was secular and no deism or theism included?
Weirdly enough, yeah, I would actually reinforce the fact that Americanism, the desire to be independent from England, probably didn't have much to do with religion. I mean, the people that we were shooting were also Christian.
Okay, so now you have a chronology where the only true American moment in time ontologically of true America was a secular blip that was then taken over by a deistic, theistic Christian blip that lasted forever until now, which is kind of degrading now. So it sounds like when you say X is un-American, the only real referent you have is a secular blip under your chronology that preceded all of the deists and theists that then influenced through common law and the rest, our justice system, right?
I don't think that's true at all. So in 1776, arguably the rationalism,
you're like a Mormon, but for America.
Arguably, the rationalism of the Enlightenment is what led to like the tolerance that allowed atheism to even exist. And like
Mhm.
Nietzsche describing the death of God was like late 19th, early 20th century. And the
Mhm.
degradation of like Christianity as a cultural force, it's probably been
Okay.
150 years.
Okay. All right. So let's say we remove all of the language culturally and legally that holds that we're endowed with any dignity or rights. Is that American?
I don't think so.
Well, is it? No, I don't know. I don't know what you think, but like obviously, un-American would you mean when you say un-American? Un-American is independent of what you think. Does that exist?
I would argue that Americanism began with the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution of the United States, but it includes the past 250 years of people fighting for the philosophy that underlied those documents. And I
Okay.
think that those documents don't necessarily need Christianity to survive.
Okay, so when we have justice and law that's reflective of a Christian church system, essentially, and let's say that's done away with and it's purely secular and it takes on a view of just strict materialism, everyone rejects even your view, that a general deistic view that maybe you have some metaphysical priority over animals. You believe that? That you and I have
Um,
some priority
I
over
think we're
animals?
an extension of the animal kingdom, but I do think that we're obviously preeminent over it.
Okay. Is there anything ontologically the case from your view that makes us superior or higher moral value than animals, or is it just you think it?
I think it's that it's primarily it like IQ and EQ, it's social intelligence and actual intelligence, and you can actually grade moral worth probably on IQ, EQ, and consciousness.
Okay, so if someone's mentally retarded and they need to be taken care of pretty much like a vegetable, they have less moral worth than you and I.
They probably have more moral worth than somebody outside the species, but yeah, they probably have less moral worth than a fully abled person.
And that's consistent with your view of being an American in regards to the law.
No,
So you're
no.
inconsistent.
Who said I wait? Why is it inconsistent for me to have a specific belief
Because
about the moral worth of
because
individuals?
you said that men, you're
I was about to
taking
say,
a
as a matter of fact, no, this is
you
stupid as
asked me
shit.
a question,
Americanism has
fuckhead.
nothing to
Let me
do with whether
answer.
or not I consider different
You
people of
got
different
cooked a
moral
second.
worth.
Hold on. Let me at least flip the burger that you are. So you just said that the moral worth is on a scale of intelligence and cognitive abilities, essentially. And so a retarded person who is kind of comatose has less moral worth than you or I because of functionality. But the problem with that view is you just went against your entire philosophy that you're trying to defend, that it's American to, let's say in the case of give women the rights because women, even though lower capacity cognitively, they don't think logically, they think a little more emotionally. You think that they have equal moral worth and value such that they are given the endowed rights of the creator, endowed rights, the right to vote. And now here you say, just 40 minutes later, that people of lesser intelligence actually don't have the same moral value or the same
No, no, no,
rights.
no. Hold on. You have to differentiate between like governing system and my personal perspective. So society, in my opinion, is better off if we treat men like they're endowed by their creator and they're created equal and all that kind of stuff. I don't think men are created equal. I don't even think you think men are created equal. I think that there's plenty of
It's an
ways in which men
interpretation.
are definitely not equal.
How do you
However,
think that
society
means?
is better if we treat people as if they were equal.
Well, what do you think that means? What do you think that interpretation of that we're equal? What do you think that
Probably
means?
equal in the eyes of God.
Yeah, I would grant that. I would never grant that we're equal in stature or shoulder width and the rest of it. I think we can agree there. The problem is
Sure, but can I want to press you just a little bit because we're running out of time. Um, do you care more? Like, I don't know if you have dogs, but let's just assume that you had a dog.
okay.
Um, do you value the life of a dog more than a mollusk? And a mollusk is a sea animal that can't see, can barely think. It basically just acts based off of like natural
Uh,
stimuli. Do
not
you
based on
value
their
a dog life more than a mollusk life?
not based on their pure ontology. I would say the dog, if I had a function in my house, the reason I'm valuing that particular dog is because it's through my human lens. It's because of me. It's human centric, not dog centric. So my dog wouldn't even be equal to a dog outside, let alone a mollusk. So, I don't differentiate between the mollusk and the dog ontologically. They're all beasts to me, and they're all under our stewardship. Now, are we to respect? There are a scale of like sort of moral respect for certain animals, and maybe there's a threshold where you're like, whatever, it's a mollusk or whatever. Sure, but ultimately, no. The distinction from a Christian view that you might know is that Christians believe that humans, particularly, are made in the image of God, which would be a metaphysical distinction, not a material distinction purely. So dogs aren't, neither are mollusks, even if there's a gradient. There's a big jump metaphysically in Christianity between any smart animal, a crow, a pig, or anything else, to a human being. I think you would agree too, right?
I mean, I agree that Christianity describes nature that way. I don't know if I agree with it, but it's fine.
All righty. So that is going to wrap up the open floor portion, and we're going to get into the closing statements here. So since Counterpoints had the first word, Counterpoints is going to go first for closing, and that'll give Jim Bob the last word. Just want to remind everyone in the chat, this is your last chance here. Get your questions in if you want to make sure your question get answered. We got a lot of super chats there already, so send it through a super chat because that's probably the best way to make sure it gets answered. So again, also, if you want to find both debaters in the description, make sure you go sub up to both of them, show them support for coming out and give you guys a great show tonight. So with that, we're going to give the mic to Counterpoints. Whenever you're ready for your 5-minute closing statement, I'll start up the timer with your voice.
Yeah, I'll try to loop one more time. So, but I'll try to be as descriptive and accurate as I possibly can be while still remaining relatively concise. So let's say that the founding fathers, let's pick a better sport. Let's say football, okay? American football. And let's say the founding father says, I think American football is the best game ever. But we know that our version of playing the game might not be perfect for all of eternity. Therefore, we're going to set up a rule where if 60% of the players and the referees get together and they decide that they want to modify a rule, they can modify a rule. And actually, this analogizes to American football perfectly because we've had rules changes for American football over the past 200 years. I mean, it's actually probably a 150-year-old game. So that is a process through which is still part of the game of football is you can make amendments to the rule while still trying to keep the essence of the game if you don't like the word spirit. However, let's say that there's one guy who's kind of a dickhead and he's like, you know what? Fuck football. I love beating motherfuckers with crowbars. It's my favorite thing in the entire world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convince 60% of the people in order to beat each other with crowbars instead of playing football. Well, if he successfully convinces 60% of the players and the referees in order to vote, in order to stop playing any iteration of football whatsoever, and to start beating the shit out of each other with crowbars instead, we could say, well, technically he acted within the rules of the game because he did get 60% of the representatives of this endeavor in order to vote for this new game. But we can clearly identify that beating the fuck out of each other with crowbars is substantively different than American football. And that is the exact conversation that we probably had for 45 minutes and looped around 6 or 7 times. These things are not illusory. They're not ephemeral. Well, actually, some of them are probably kind of ephemeral, but they're not vague. We can go back to the Federalist Papers. We can go back to the Founding Fathers. We can go back to George Washington. All these motherfuckers wrote this shit down. So you can read what they thought was good for them, what they thought was good for the immediate political moment, what they thought would last the test of time, and you can see what they had hoped for the American people. And realistically, emancipating slaves, emancipating women, giving people the right to vote. Some of them might have been uncomfortable with that shit because it probably gave some people too much freedom. But realistically, it's rooted in the founding philosophy of the preamble of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And so that's where, for me, Christian nationalism, Mr. Jim Bob asked me where the line is. I don't care if you vote your conscience. I don't care if you act as a religious group. I don't care if you believe that God's law is supreme above man's law. That's a relatively normal belief within Christian circles. What I do care about is that once you start saying, hey, we're going to beat the fuck out of each other with crowbars, and I'm going to convince 60% of the population to beat the fuck out of each other with crowbars, but I'm still going to call it football, I'm going to say you're full of shit. End of yap.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And with that, we're going to hand the mic over to Jim Bob. And Jim Bob, whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate the exchange. Thanks, Counterpoints, for coming out. Yeah, the question is whether or not Christian nationalism is American. I wanted to really pinpoint how does my opponent know what's American and when is something truly American and not American. It looks like he appealed to some sort of blip in time of secularism where Americanism was in its true form and then moved away when it became deistic and theistic. I'm not sure how he justifies that movement or when and where that happens, some sort of continuum. Really, this debate reduced to a really important moment here. So there's no point in me using the time to sort of, be verbose here. Really, it comes down to this one P and not P. I asked if it's American to change the Constitution. My opponent said yes. We know that the Constitution can be changed. It's embedded in our very nation and its founding principles. We can do that. We have done it. P, it's American to change the Constitution. But when I asked my opponent, is it un-American to remove the woman's right to vote? He said, no, it's un-American. I said, that's weird because that's P. It's American to change the Constitution. That's weird. So it's American to change the Constitution, but it's un-American to change the Constitution. That's a direct contradiction. Now he says, well, no, it's not. It's that the thing that you're changes is the thing that I really don't want you to change. I didn't ask what you think about it. I didn't ask whether you think it's possible to change it. There are other nations that gave the woman right to vote and then they took it. So it's clearly, hypothetically, logically, practically possible. The question isn't whether or not it's possible. The question is about the view itself. If it's logically possible and practically possible, even if it's unlikely, it's irrelevant. P, it's American to change the Constitution. If I'm a Christian nationalist and I change the Constitution, that's American. Not P, it's un-American to change the Constitution. That is the view of my opponent. That's really the only contradiction in this entire debate that I needed to present clearly and have my own opponent say it with his own words, which he did multiple times. There were some other contradiction in there. It doesn't matter. The only necessary contradiction to be elucidated to the audience is P, it's American to change the Constitution. Not P, it's un-American to change the Constitution. And when I ask you, wait a second, how do you reconcile this contradiction? He says, well, no, let's go back to the beginning of slavery. Well, slavery could also be reinstituted based on the American project of the Constitution. It's totally possible, logically, to vote and to do things in a certain way, to then change all the amendments to, let's call it restorative constitutionalism. You know, how they do restorative theology, restorative constitutionalism. There's nothing inconsistent with Americanism, being an American and using the apparatus we have now to change the Constitution. Now, I've seen this debate with a variety of other people here, and it's always this point that really gets them to basically the term, delete themselves in the debate. You just ask them, why is it un-American? They say because it violates the Constitution. You say, can I change the Constitution? They say, yeah, that's very American. That's it. That's as easy as it is. So it's a much more interesting debate, maybe in a future debate. Why is, if we agree that power can be held and occupied by certain ideologies, and really the American project is a war of ideologies, which is a war of theologies. If we all just stop all the bullshit and just admit that we're in a competition for the helm of power. I'm consistent. There's a competition for the helm of power. The American project actually allows for the competition so that people can win the helm of power. It's consistent for Christians to vote locally at the city level, at the state level, at the national level, the federal level, completely vote to implement their Christian ethical systems, and it's completely consistent with the Constitution. So stop pretending it's not. A lot of people on the left pretend it's not. They cite the First Amendment has nothing to do with limiting Christians from taking power and influencing law at all. It has to do with establishing a new religion, the state, that the state owns, that the state grows himself. That's not what we're doing. We have a religion, Orthodox Christianity. You should be voting consistent with your ethical paradigm. And if that means taking over the government, awesome.
All righty. Thank you for that closing. Shout out to both debaters for wrapping up their arguments, keeping this strong all the way through. It's a shout out to both of you for that. Now we're going to move into the 30-minute Q&A. But I like to ask a question, either one that like I wanted to hear the answer again from the debate, or something I just noticed through the debate. So the first question's going to be for Connor's side. With the First Amendment having the free exercise of religion, because this was brought up, why wouldn't that, like, why does it make it un-American if that's what would be happening, is Christians exercising their religion?
Yeah, I hope I can try to make myself clear. I don't care that Christians believe that God's law is supreme. I don't care that they're trying to implement their agenda, but I do think that you have to go through that amendment process if you're going to violate initial amendments. So as an example, let's say that we decide that slavery is okay because slavery is mentioned in the Old Testament and we want to reinstitute slavery. Well, that would clearly be a violation of the Bill of Rights, and it would clearly be a violation of the arc of American culture. And so, yeah, technically you could amend the Constitution of the United States in order to do that. But then itself, I would view that as spiritually violative of what America is.
All right. And did you have something for that, Jim Bob?
Well, I mean, it's just like, I said it 19 times in my closer. Like, it's totally American to change the Constitution. We've done it many times. He's saying, well, it's spiritually violative. And I still don't know. I asked him, what is the standard for spiritual violative? You guys remember? Let's hear it in the chat. What is his barometer for spiritual violation? It's vibes, bro.
Is beating the fuck out of somebody with a crowbar the same as American football?
Depends on the vibes, bro.
I think the clear answer is no, and you're being obtuse.
Is taking women's right to vote the same as beating them the fuck up with a crowbar, retard?
No.
Good. What's your point then?
My point is that if you look at the preamble, I know my points. Thank you. If you look at the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, it's pretty clear that actually giving people more freedom over time is part of the intention of our nation. So.
All righty. And then for Jim Bob's side, so one of the things I see talked about for like against your side is the fact that like America prioritizes like a pluralism amongst the people, and the big idea of Christian nationalism won't prioritize this. So does that make it un-American, or is this still?
Yeah, well, I would say if we go back to history now, like Counterpoints takes a very like sort of like rigorous novel approach to when there was a like true Americanism peeked its head in, and then it kind of went away dormant, and maybe we can bring it back or something like this. I hold the view that the American project, even though I have criticisms of the Enlightenment, libertarian kind of senses and classical liberalism, I think it's a shit show. But the thing is, what was embedded in the culture at the time, because this is really an argument about culture and what informs culture and how that intertwines with policy. The time of the founding fathers and those guys, they couldn't imagine men and women would take liberalism, the liberal freedom, to the extent that they did. I mean, even the early libertarian writers would be shocked to see people wearing dildos on their faces in front of children, right? So there's this sense of like deontology. I think what's important from my view is that your duties may give you some sense of like entitlement, right? Your duties, like for men have duties, and because they have duties to like protect men and women and children and other men even, because they have those duties and they're capable of doing it, they have a right, they have a privilege. There's a different class in society, and I think even counterpoints would agree that the distinction between men and women sort of necessitate this kind of difference in duties. But it was our movement away from duties that gets us in this shithole, which is like, I deserve this. I have the right to this. I want stuff. Give me stuff. Give me stuff, right? Maybe Counterpoints has some criticisms of the same thing. When you remove the duties from society, it starts to crumble because everyone takes this individualist approach where they don't have to actually do anything. As Andrew points, rights are, what are they? What does he say? They're entitlements absent duties. And he's right. They're entitlements. Why are you entitled to shit, dude? A nation built on pure entitlements without duties is a shit show. It's going to burn, and it is burning. So, I mean, to that point, maybe Counterpoints, we could meet in the middle and say, isn't it better for a society to assume a whole slew of duties?
Yeah.
Even if you give them rights, even if you give them some rights?
Yeah. No, I think that one of the things that I have to argue for with my chat, because I do have a split chat that's like half libertarian, conservatarian, half liberal, is that duties, responsibilities oftentimes give you purpose. And that not only that, but like discipline, virtue, things that you find in the Nicomachean Ethics or the Bible, those are the kind of things that like make life worth living. And that whole like hedonistic, what happens when you look at freedom, this is something that we probably agree on. When you look at freedom as its own end, then all you're really looking for is more experiences to explore within your maximal freedom.
That's right.
Then your God kind of becomes hedonism. And then once it becomes hedonism, you mistake happiness and purpose for pleasure. And then you fuck up your life. And so, weirdly enough, we're probably pretty aligned on this.
Yeah, that's actually why Counterpoints, I brought up the woman thing. Cause like when I look at voting, I kind of see clearly it's like, oh, even if we lost against the government, the act of the men collectively voting, it's kind of like, without saying it, they're saying, well, I won't take out my AR-15 and gather with my friends and overthrow you. I'll just try to vote and hope you guys do the job. But the reason I asked, and maybe you weren't ever asked this, is, well, what do the women actually do? This is an issue of like, of duties. Like, what are our duties in the world? What is a woman's duty in this world? Well, from a Christian lens, regardless of whether you think Christianity at the national level is incompatible with, the founding fathers' vision or whatever, certainly getting back to women being sort of persuaded, and you said you agree with cultural pressure, right? Persuaded back to their duties, which is better for society. It actually ends up being better for society for women to resort, for the most part. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions, but for the most part, resort back to the meme of the mother, back to the caregiver, back to the people who we should protect because they are the earliest formation of the next human beings in our society. And we've just kind of we went, hey, ladies, you have the right to be a Nike executive. And they're like, I'm going to do that. And then they're 40 and they're crying and they have wine-stained teeth, hoping to get invited to a wedding so they can be hit on by a 21-year-old. It's pathetic.
What my frustration though is, excuse me, I agree that the archetypical duties of the male are to provide, protect, whatever you want to list as the violence, or at least have some kind of capacity for violence. But what I kind of resent is that many men don't take these duties seriously. They don't take providing seriously. They don't take taking care of their family seriously, taking care of their community seriously. They don't train in violence. They don't train their bodies. They don't do any of that kind of crap. And yet they'll turn around and be like, oh, every single woman is like an Instagram whore who's selling their body on OnlyFans and
You're talking about red pill people, right?
Right. Yeah. That, number one, not only is that statistically not true, but then number two, actually Googling this, I thought it was like a shocking stat. Out of all the women by age 50, because I think 50 is kind of the cutoff for when you can realistically have kids, 85% of women will have kids, okay, at some point in their life. Now, are they good mothers? Who fucking knows? Are they fulfilling their marital obligations? Who knows? But I'm just saying, if you think that the stereotypical male responsibility is violence and capacity for violence and productivity, and the stereotypical female thing is having kids, 85% of them are partially fulfilling their duties.
Like in the end, they eventually do it, right? They eventually
Yeah.
do the thing.
Yeah. Even the ad executives have a geriatric baby at 42.
Yeah. I would say if that were the case, there's still something that needs to inform the context of the duties, right? Like what?
Well,
like in what?
I think
what
we're-
paradigm is a duty, right? Like for instance, I'll ask you, from a deistic view, how do you determine like what is the context for a woman's duty as a mother, like from your view?
Yeah, I think religion is actually rooted in naturalism as well. So I think that religion and nature are not incompatible. I actually think they probably correlate. I think when you look at like divine inspiration, or if you look at like Proverbs or Psalms or passages or whatever, effectively what you have is you have holy men looking at the world that they're surrounded with and making moral observations. Whether or not you believe that's inspired by God is up to the individual. So what I would say is, what do I base my belief on what a woman should be within the family unit? I mean, I kind of base it partially on the Bible, partially on anthropology, partially on history. And so, yeah, like obviously a loyal, virtuous mother who loves her kids and loves her partner, that's the ideal. And we should all strive towards that ideal, even if we fail.
Can I ask you personally, do you have kids and a wife?
2 children and a wife, both boys.
Okay. Have you ever been to Divine Liturgy?
No.
Orthodox Christian church?
No, my family's Protestant. Well, okay, my dad's Catholic. Everybody else is Protestant.
Okay, well, my invitation is just like check it out, because this is an interesting conversation from a general sort of vague deistic view where you're like, well, I kind of understand it, maybe a necessity for God, but I don't know who God is, and it's kind of beyond my capacity to engage with it or something. Specifically, the paradigm of like man, woman, bride, groom, what a family is it reflective of something greater? I would argue when you look at a Christian orthodoxy and you actually go and participate and check out a liturgy, you start to see at least a semblance of like how you could coherently derive the metaphysics of man, woman, and family from something clear, as opposed to you getting it intuitively. It seems like you get it intuitively. Like, yeah, you kind of get the hierarchical, there's a general deistic God, and then I'm man and I'm kind of representative of God, but not actually God. And then I'm leading the woman, and then the woman is taking care of the kids. It's like this nice, beautiful sloping hierarchy, right? Well, my challenge to anyone who sees that intuitively, which I'm assuming you do, is to try to pursue it more rigorously and go, wait a second, if that's kind of like if that's a perceivable truth, what if it's the case that does actually come from some source that makes sense? And that's why I invite you to Divine Liturgy. That's why. It's actually from a kind of like a philosophical lens.
Cool.
Based. I like it. All right, I'm going to start this timer up now for the chats questions, and there's a lot of super chats coming both from all sides here. So with the ones that aren't questions, if you want to respond to them, just interrupt me, and you can respond however you'd like. But for the ones that are questions, I'll stop for you guys. So first thing that came in here, gifted 5 Counterpoints memberships. Shout out to Weld QC John. Then we got $2 from Justin Henley, says Scud incoming. And then we got $5 from Corey, says Dear Lord, it's Counterpoints. He didn't like to see your Counterpoints. He was upset.
Fuck you too, bud.
We got Wagira gifted 5 Speakeasy memberships. Shout out to you, Wagira. Thank you very much. Justin Henley with another $2 says he just ended his own argument by explaining how. This must have been earlier. I don't know if we can know exactly what they're
I'll
talking about here.
I'll just say football analogy whenever we hit the loop again.
All right. Pharma Cat comes in with some little disco men, $5. Thank you very much. Teriak for €5. Makwa.
Machiwa.
Oh,
Like
Machiwa.
a new
Sorry.
age. It's a new age meme.
Machiwa, Jim Bob.
Machiwa.
Machiwa chat. Thank Machiwa to Teriak too. James Smith comes in for $10. Jortlandia tax. Thank you very much, James Smith. Lauren comes in, became a YouTube member. Thank you very much, Lauren. Absolutely amazing. Sean of the Roses says, "Pay your taxes" for $5.
It's a part of your social duties.
That's
Yes,
right. Civic duty. Pay your taxes.
that's right.
To us, to all of us.
It's honestly, it's like the foundation of civilization. So if you're saying exclamation point question mark, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Well, Manuel, Jesus, I probably butchered that. Sorry. Sends in 50 MX. What is MX? I don't know if I've seen that.
Mexican. That means it's
Oh.
like $3.
If it's not US dollars, it's not American. Source this very non-American super chat based. I like it. Tay Gooch, still one of my favorite YouTube names. Let's fucking go. Not one step back. Savage Jim Bob. Shout out Tay Gooch. JB Peltier comes in for $5. Convenient how America stops being a landmass and a population and starts being an idea only when the population starts to assert themselves. Anyone want to answer that?
No, I mean, that's just descriptively true. Yeah. Like
Right.
one of the things that Jim Bottom has repeated that we didn't get into, but I would actually be interested in getting into. He was saying like liberalism opens up the gates for tribal ideologies to compete for the helms of power. I agree with that fundamentally. Power abhors a fucking vacuum. And that's one of the things that I hate about liberalism and liberals in particular, is that most liberals don't have a spine.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that I think when it comes down to it, it's like what did Ben Shapiro always say? Say politics is downstream from culture, but he never said what culture is downstream from, and he never does, because he has to get into his theology, which you know what that ends up having to say about all of us. But the thing is, like, it seems reasonable to just say, okay, well, if we kind of agree that politics is downstream from culture and culture can influence politics, you ask, well, what influences culture? And we'd probably all agree whatever our worldview is. So it's probably, for Christians, it's Christianity, and for other people, it's different things. And maybe Connor has a general deistic view that informs it, tied with like natural law or something like this. But the one thing we have to agree on is, if it's true that your metaethical view, your ultimate philosophy informs culture and culture informs politics, then aren't we in a constant race for which culture dictates the arms of policy and then also enforces it? To me, that's non-controversial, but for some reason in this day and age, it's controversial. It's almost like people go, well, you can believe what you want, just don't force your beliefs on me. Like, did you graduate out of that, Connor? Or do you still...
Yeah. No. I mean, I think that liberalism for me is the worst form of governments, except for all the other ones, relatively speaking. And one of the things that I hate about liberals in general is they abdicate their responsibility to promote what should be a healthy culture. They don't think they can judge anybody. They can't judge anybody. Somebody does a shitload of heroin, you can't judge them.
Well, it's
Somebody
relative.
bangs
It's like
1,000 dudes in 24 hours,
Yeah,
you can't judge them. You can't say anything about it. And if you do say anything about it, you're kind of approved, which is fucking very stupid.
Yeah, I agree with that there's a social element that I think individualism being a branch out of liberalism, we're all kind of living our own lives being like, well, I'm not going to say anything. It's like, well, no, we used to have a strong culture where you did say something. The power, did we not see the power of social shaming and persuasion during the Karunka years? Like, we saw how that went, right? It was like, oh man, like you can outside of law, outside of the gun, you could influence a lot of human behavior. And that's what I'm saying is like, I'm just saying, Christians should step up. Why? Because Connor agrees. If you don't step up with your ethical principles and get loud and try to persuade, not just by law, but socially, then other people fill in the vacuum, dude, and they just do it themselves. And you're like, you shouldn't do that. And you're like, they're going to say, why not? You're not doing it. I'll do it. I don't care.
The reason why people are scared, though, is because what you said effectively is that, people are always fighting for the wheels of power. But that's been true as long as humanity's been around.
Mhm.
And realistically, if you look at the medieval period, if you look at the pre-medieval period, that was ultimately decided by violence. So the reason why liberals and I guess conservatarians or whatever who believe in liberal principles, the reason why they get freaked out is because they're worried that you're going to throw out the entire game. So so for instance, like I understand that Christian theocracy might not be as bad as fascism, but let's say that fascists came in, obviously there could be really, really, really bad consequences for shitloads of people. And so if somebody doesn't believe in the rules of the game, then the game falls apart.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's why I always ask a secularist in particular or an atheist. I try to trap them. They go, I go, do you believe people can have their beliefs, but you just don't want them forced on people? And they go, yeah, exactly. And I go, what if someone doesn't believe in rights? And then they're done. They have to concede that, okay, there's one thing they believe in that they believe should be forced on people, which is this concept. And you go, it's not about whether or not it's better if you assume rights. The question is more like, well, at least concede and bite the bullet that you do also compete to force your beliefs on other people. You just have a different threshold, right? I just
Public
think
education is inherently liberal. And what I mean by that is if you view the founding of this nation as a liberal project, I'm using like capital L liberal. I'm not talking about people with blue hair. I'm talking about like a liberty-based philosophy. When you say the Pledge of Allegiance, when you learn about American civics, when you learn about the Bill of Rights, when you learn about foreign countries, when you learn about this, when you learn about
it's like a dogma. It's like a type of dogma, right? Or at least
they are indoctrinating you into the civic religion of liberalism.
Right. That's why I think it ultimately counterpoints that it really comes down to whether you want to call them full religions, because, it seems like you're capable of being elastic and going, well, it's kind of a religion. It doesn't need like this specific God, but generally, colloquially, we're saying, oh, yeah, there is a kind of religion to this system. So it's a competition of religions.
People who ignore spirituality or religion, they end up worshiping politics.
All right. Next one here from Sean of the Roses. $5 says, take my money for that quick win. Great job, Jim Bob.
Thanks, Sean.
And next one comes in here. Tay Gooch for $10. Another $10 says, for the goal, not one step back. Much love from Texas. Shout out to you, Tay Gooch. Jess Gerald comes in and for $10 says, because Jim Bob content slaps.
What's up, Jess Gerald?
Shout out Jess Gerald. $5 from Justin Henley. Historically, counterpoints, you'd have to say slavery was American. It was originally allowed and libertine for some and degenerate. It was Christian to amend it.
I would argue that the Three-Fifths Compromise and the preamble to the Declaration of the Independence kind of set up the internal cultural contradiction that would result in the abolishment of slavery. So yeah, I agree that slavery is American, but then that kind of gets back into the conversation of, is it American to amend or abolish an American institution? Yeah, it is.
All right. Did you have something for that, Jim Bob?
Nope, I don't.
Right. Next one comes in from we're just gonna call you XB. All right. XB, ring it up, Jim Bob Dub. Now we get to enjoy the Spurg Cope for the rest of the allotted time. Thank you, XB. Wrath of Reason comes in for $20, says, popping in to say hello, W Jim Bob.
Nice.
Thank you, Wrath of Reason. Gorilla Biscuits. Or Gorilla Biscuits, baby. Sorry. Gifted one made by Jim Bob membership. Shout out to you, Gorilla Biscuits. Dane Snyder comes in. I didn't realize this was a gun show. Look at Jim Bob. Yeah, Jim Bob's got the guns up.
Slowly but surely, but not even.
Michael Stark comes in for $5. Ask him if communism is American. If he says no, give the same hypothetical we were, or where we do it by democratically changing the Constitution.
Yeah, so communism actually isn't American. I actually forget. Isn't Karl Marx German or Austrian or some shit?
Oy.
But yeah, but he's Western. And no, communism, the decommodification, socialism is a decommodification of basic human need and workers owning the means of production. Communism is a moneyless, stateless class of society. I think they're utopian dribble. I think they're stupid as shit. And I think that while I brought up the Chinese example, you could vote in communism through the amendment process. You could abolish the original constitution. I would view communism as contradictory to the American project as espoused by the founding fathers. It's not about life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness.
All righty. Next one comes in. Games are for kids, $10. We believe in the Constitution as it is and will be in America, not as it could be. We could outlaw all laws. It doesn't make it American to believe in law and order today.
I agree.
I'm not sure that follows the belief in law and order versus what's hypothetically and practically possible. There's a pretty easy demonstration that the Constitution does in fact have amendments, which means that you can change it. So like, you know, it's completely American to give women rights, and it's completely American to change those so long as the process is consistent with this project called the American project and its laws. So it's like laws change all the time, dude. That's like saying like, that's like saying, hold on. But hold on. This is like saying like, okay, Americans, we have laws. We believe in law and order. Okay. We believe in law and order. Good. It doesn't follow that the laws are always moral. So it's a part of the American project to change laws, right? So if it's a part of the American project and it's fully American to change laws, then saying all of the stuff he just said, it's like that. What I tried to produce here is that it's very American to be able to change all of these things. That's all. It's just American to be able to change it.
Okay, but my argument would be, let's say that rather than taking away somebody's right to vote, because that's a little bit, I don't know, it's not as bad as other things. But let's say that we made it legal to murder or to kidnap your neighbors and put them into a cage. We would obviously believe that those were violative of their rights to life, their rights to liberty, their rights to the pursuit of happiness. We would see how it was a violation of the Bill of Rights. So effectively, that's what we're saying is like, yeah, technically you could make pedophilia legal technically through the amendment process. It would still be violative of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the Bill of Rights, which is what would render it un-American.
Okay, but listen, when they first crafted this, the language was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Was it un-American to change it to happiness?
Wasn't that changed before they signed it all because they needed unanimous?
Well, that's the thing is that's my point is everything's a compromise. So it's like what you have to do is arbitrarily go into the compromises and the changes and go, that's American, that's un-American. I would argue counterpoints that based on the views you've shared tonight, you would actually be highly critical. It would be better for your view to be like, well, it was a mistake to change it from property. You know why? Property actually gives you obligation, doesn't it? Like if you own property. Now the pursuit of happiness, that's like fucking Disney shit. It's like, what does that even mean? Like you have the right to pursue. Well, what if it makes me happy to make everyone miserable and expose myself, you know, in public? It's like, it's so ambiguous. I don't know why they did that. Now I'm not great at history, but like I look at that language and I go, that doesn't even fucking sound American. Like it sounds more American to say, no, you have a right to own property and you have the right to defend it. Happiness is like, what the you might as well say gender. Like you have the right to a gender. It's like, it doesn't mean anything to me.
The thing that we agree on, even if we don't agree on fundamental concepts, the thing that we agree on is we've probably gone decently far in the freedom direction. We probably need to reinforce the responsibility and
pull it back. I agree. We gotta pull it back a little bit, just a little bit.
I'll rein it in.
Yeah.
JB Peltier for $5 says, so we can't lawfully use the stones to destroy the stones?
I'm not sure if I'm tracking.
I mean, I think I was guessing it was like a Muslim pun or something. Uh, member for 9 months, Wagira, give me back those state religions. What's wrong with that? Anything for that?
I don't know if I'm tracking.
Give me back. Oh, like just like early
Like-
on, the states had the requirements to serve in office and
Oh.
even own land and shit like that. And you had to be like, oh, you're a Christian. I actually like that. I know it gets into like, well, now you have a battle of which denomination. That's fine. I like battling denominations, but I do like this concept where there's actually a set of metaphysical prerequisites for trust. You know, you could say like it enhances trust, and you could say you're being a bad Christian. Now, you can't say you're being a bad secularist, right?
I think even secularists oftentimes subscribe to like humanism, but yeah, then you start fighting about like hedonism and pursuit of happiness and nihilism and all that bullshit. So you can say you're a bad secularist, but then you start arguing about shit. So
Well, yeah, like you can't have a standard for it. That's why you know what, it's funny to pose this
there's
question.
nothing.
That
I think the Trinity is pretty central to Christianity. So typically, if somebody doesn't believe in the Trinity, then you can say you're not a Christian. I don't think that there's a secular equivalent of belief.
Right. Well, that's what gets interesting. If you ask a secularist, if your secularist best friend suddenly out of nowhere emailed you and was like, dude, I don't believe in any of the Christian doctrine, but I'm going to start voting consistent with Christian ethical laws. And he's like, what the fuck? He couldn't say to his friend, right, you're being a bad secularist, right?
No, it's relatively like I think secular is supposed to be. I'd have to look up the definition, but I think it's just kind of like a divorce of like religiosity from state affairs. But at the same time, like he could just believe that religious prescriptions were correct, even if the religion was incorrect.
Right.
Yeah. Secular says denoting attitudes, activities, or other things that have no religious or spiritual basis. Yeah, like there's pro-life atheists, you know, they're rare, but they exist.
Yep.
All right. We got from Tay Gooch, $10 says checkmate. Thank you, Tay Gooch, for sending that in. We got $5 from Austin, says make him lose his shit, Jim Bob.
This was me calm tonight, fellas.
He was pretty collected. I gotta say.
Yeah, it was great. I was like, I didn't have to even step in. Those are always my favorite debates. Would you agree that a conservative who works with progressives who cheer on the death of conservatives is a coward and a person of low moral character?
For you
yeah,
or me?
That's not me.
Yeah, I would say they're. What are they conserving if they're doing that? I don't know what that means if they are.
Yeah. So actually, sorry, can you go back real quick?
Oh yeah.
So there's like 6 different conservatisms. There's Burkean, fiscal, social, constitutional, national. Actually, somebody introduced me to national conservatism, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks ago or whatever. And actually, I used to argue that Donald Trump was not a conservative. However, I think he can actually be argued to be a national conservative. I think he actually can. So the thing is, if you look at Burke, if you look at fiscal conservatism, if you look at social conservatism, the Trump and MAGA movement fail on so many levels that I fought against Trump and MAGA and I lost, but I'm really excited for Trump to be out of office. And I don't think I've ever cheered on the death of conservatives ever. So I don't know where you're getting your information, Blaster Bot, but you can suck a barrel of dicks.
A barrel of dicks. I don't even know if I've heard that one. A barrel of dicks. That's good. XB for $5 says viability. How many Americans in the 1800s would have said gay marriage was realistically going to be made legal ever? This guy isn't serious.
Okay.
All righty. $5 from JB. Peltier again says, started throwing spirit around as deliberately ambiguous filler.
I think we can all agree that beating the fuck out of people with crowbars is not American football.
All right. Big W for this is Tay Gooch for 10. Big W for Jim Bob. Connor's IQ is over 9,000, and we just don't get it yet.
Yep.
Connor,
Gooch.
do you believe in evolution?
Yep.
You do. Do you debate it at all, or?
No, but I mean,
Okay.
I'd be open to it.
Okay, cool. I'll text you. You're on X or something?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll reach out.
Based. I want to watch that one. JB says, "Why can't we be friends?" Tell him
We
JB,
can
why
be.
can't
I
we
don't
be
hate Jim Bob.
I don't hate Connor.
We can be friends.
That's it. That's it. Small fry for $10. There are certain ideals that are integral to the American identity. Throwing them out, even democratically, is un-American.
Small fry gets it.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't tell me where those ideals come from. So some people would say it's just pure liberty. I both Connor and I look at that and we go, yeah, but there's going to be a problem there eventually. And you say, well, what are the ideals if it's not Christian? Let's say even make it more broad. If it's not theistic or deistic, I'm not sure what the ideals are and how you justify the ideals. What is it? Just like right now, I think the ideals, unfortunately, are especially with like immigration. It's like you get conservatives going, well, we should just transport a lot of people here so long as they're good economically. And you're like, do we see that our existence isn't just pure economic choices? Like, do people see that now, that our existence isn't purely cogs in an economic wheel? Or no? Am I the only one? I don't know.
No, that's a legitimate difference between like fiscal conservatives who are typically like strong capitalists and national conservatives who are people who are trying to preserve a nation and a culture and a sovereignty and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of need to retract a little bit. I used to accuse Donald Trump of not being any kind of conservative. He's a national conservative, in my opinion. And but small fry, I don't even know if you're agreeing with Jim Bob or you're agreeing with me. But I agree with the sentiment. I think that effectively, if fascists came into the United States, and I'm not using that as a derogatory term, I'm using it descriptively. If fascists voted in a fascist regime, I wouldn't view that as an American project, because it doesn't believe in life, doesn't believe in liberty, it doesn't believe in the pursuit of happiness or the pursuit of property, it doesn't believe in the Bill of Rights, it doesn't believe in any of that kind of shit. So I would view that as a departure from the American project. But thank you. I'm hoping one person understood what I said.
Well, it was so platitudinal. It could have been me agree with it and you agree with it. It could have been true for either.
Well, he could be saying that Christianity is central to American identity, right? He could be saying
that's what I'm saying. We don't know.
I would make counter arguments about different kinds of Americans who aren't Christian, but once again, I don't think it matters. It's fine.
All right, $2 from both. How can you lose a debate 6 times within 30 minutes? Didn't specify who.
No, I'm sure that's a Jim Bobber, but guys, like one of the cringe things that I find in the debate sphere is unilaterally declaring victory while having a debate doesn't mean you actually won the debate. It's kind of I think that rhetoricians do that for stupid people like you. Sorry.
All right. $5 comes in from JB. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and voting.
Yeah. Yeah. And a bathroom. And a bathroom I can go into. Yeah.
$2 from JB. Connor points. Are women obliged to have kids?
Not legally. But I think culturally, it should definitely be encouraged. We talked about cultural pressure throughout this. I think men should be culturally encouraged to be protectors, providers, capable of violence, even if they don't like violence. I think they should try to fulfill the archetypes of masculinity. And I think that standard should apply to women as well. Now, maybe you're a butch woman, maybe you're a lesbian, maybe you're ugly, maybe you can't have kids, maybe you can't fulfill the stereotype of like archetypical femininity. But I do think in general, cultural pressure towards being a wife and a mother is probably socially positive and good.
All right. $5 comes in from Justin Henley. Says, so your answer to Jim Bob's women's rights question is that the writers of the Constitution misinterpreted what they wrote. Stick to 40K. GW suits you.
Nah, Justin, you're just kind of dumb. So if you actually go back to the founding fathers themselves were conflicted about the arc of history and justice and rights for different kinds of people. Now, let's be real. They probably didn't give a fuck about women, but I would say that they did give a fuck about like what is going to be the legacy of America in reference to slavery and the rights of slaves.
Well, he's half black, and so you're half racist for calling him dumb.
I'm hella racist.
Hella racist.
I'm like fun racist. Like I like
Me too.
I like ribbing people.
Well,
of
to
different
quote
backgrounds.
a great creator I heard just recently, everybody's a little racist sometimes.
A bit.
Dane Snyder for $10 says, counterpoints. If it's true that childbearing is a woman's obligation, would you agree that abortion and birth control are un-American? Would you agree that childbearing is a patriotic act?
I'll answer it in reverse order. I think that having children and raising them in a carefully considered household is a patriotic act. I think that I set a limit at abortion for like proto-consciousness, but I do think that like abortion is like morally wrong. I don't think that you should engage in abortion. It's still potential human life. Now, birth control, though, is like if you're talking about like using a condom or if you're talking about like using birth control randomly, like as you're growing up, I don't think that's quote unquote un-American, especially when you're talking about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Jim Bob and I might align on purpose being more important than pleasure and contentment being more important than the fleeting highs of hedonism. But not everybody agrees with that. And I do think that freedom is the freedom to make the right decisions. I think, unfortunately, it's also the freedom to make the wrong decisions and learn from your mistakes.
All righty. Next one comes in. Games are for kids. Alicia has my. Oh, yeah, that's right. This one was sent to me. I guess they weren't able to put it in. This one says, hypothetically, we could as easily enslave all Christians and abolish Christianity through constitutional amendment. Is it American to believe in anything?
Yeah, I would say it's contrary to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and the Bill of Rights.
All right.
Jim Bob, I think they were saying like the power to enslave Christians and the power to destroy Christianity is technically possible through the this is one of my community members. They're saying it's technically possible through the amendment process. So would you view it as American? If, like atheists and Muslims and Jews and Buddhists allied themselves to enslave Christianity.
Yeah, that would be a bigger critique of what is American, which is interesting because this level of debate was about what you think is American and whether or not I could use the current system to do exactly similar power moves, which is all I have access to right now. But this is what's interesting. This pushes my paradigm out a level. And what I look at is not what's American. I look at what's Orthodox Christian and how I can intertwine it into what's American. And so you're right. The chatter's right. If I was strictly holding to a boomer, this is America, liberty, my freedom, all this shit, we went to the moon. Yeah, he would be right. You're just being in a war. You're at a constant war with other people who are trying to take the helm. Look at, it's no joke. Look at Dearborn. Look at New York City. This is no joke. This is an ideological war. There are people ideologically bound to destroying your ideology. And it's like Christians are actually your best asset to fighting Islam, right? For secularists. But the problem is secularists and feminists, they vote, their voting patterns allow the worst ideologies to come into America. Is that American? Is immigration American? That's a whole other topic for a debate.
All right. So because we went past the 30 minutes now, I'm just going to kind of like go through here because there's so many of them and look for the questions here. This one here, this one's a statement, but I think it's something you guys could answer to. It's another one from Games Are for Kids. When people vote away their right to vote or their rights, it becomes un-American.
That's actually interesting because he did mention the suffrage movement, and you probably more historically, you have a higher historical acumen than me probably, is that that the first movement to giving women the right to vote, the majority of women who were homemakers didn't actually want it. Were they being un-American?
No, because they were expressing their genuinely held conscience, allegedly.
Yeah, okay, cool. So you're conscious. So the women who were um expressing their genuine held conscience to give the women the right to vote, when they set up blockades and made it impossible for the women who didn't want the right to vote to show up at the referendums, they were also being American, right?
Well, I mean, that gets into like the right to peaceably assemble and protest. So I would say that maybe rebellion is a cultural touchstone of American history, but they're still criminals deserving of incarceration. Like the Boston Tea Party wasn't legal, right? The revolution of the United States, or the Revolutionary War, wasn't legal. It was moral, but that's like, is that American? I think so. So they're still
All right.
criminals.
All right, Dane Snyder comes in with a question here for 10. Does a person have to be a Christian in order to hold the principles of Christian nationalism, or can an atheist, Muslim, or whatever hold Christian ethics while rejecting the supernatural claims?
I don't know what Jim Bob's answer is. I know what my answer is. So
Yeah, we asked this.
Jim
I
Bob, can
asked
you go
him.
first?
Yeah, I asked Connor. We brought this up before. If some secularist says, dude, I don't believe in any of this shit, but I do want to adopt all their ethical systems and informed law based on Christian, and I want to live around Christians. I don't even believe it. Yeah, they don't have to be Christian. In fact, that's one of the key arguments against secularism when you're doing like a ethics debate with them. You just simply posit this question: hey, dude, can your best friend who's a total secularist, doesn't believe in any of the Christian dogma, can they vote Christian nationalism? Are they still secularists? Yeah, they are actually.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, I think this question is actually probably more nuanced than I want to give it credit for. So I would say that Christian nationalism, definitionally, you're identifying the thing and then you're identifying the people that you're advocating for. And so I would say that, like, if you don't believe in the Trinity, then definition, like I'm culturally Christian, right? But I don't believe in the Trinity. Therefore, I would never claim the label Christian. Okay. So I wouldn't consider myself a part of the nation. Could I live within the nation peaceably? Could I agree to the precepts? Yeah, obviously. But then I do think that the fear typically with nationalism is it's oftentimes an exclusive definition. So therefore, I would expect some level of discrimination eventually, where they would just say, we'll tolerate you, but you're not really one of us.
Do you agree that discrimination is good if you do have a pretty cohesive identity of, like, I always use Japan, like if I ever visited Japan, I would want to experience legit sushi, but I would also be really annoyed if some sort of Japanese amenity that was only for Japanese, I was allowed to do it. I would actually like it if they said, no, not you, gringo, or whatever their version of that is, right? Like, that's discrimination that I think is essential to protecting the identity. Now, obviously, America, we have a very, we're infant and we're pluralistic. So we don't have the same identity type of thing as Japan or the long-lasting European nations at this point. But I like that. I kind of wish America had something like that, but I can't pretend to exhaustively list what those things are. Like, I don't know what.
I think descriptively, you're just right that if you don't discriminate, if you don't have rules, then your sense of definition or identity kind of, like, it at minimum kind of melts, and at maximum it disappears entirely. The reason why I appeal to civic nationalism or paperwork nationalism, which is effectively believing in the Constitution of the United States, is that if you believe in freedom of conscience and freedom of speech, if you believe in the right to self-defense up to and including against the government, and if you believe in, like, due process of law and the other amendments that kind of give people their rights under the Constitution of the United States, that's enough for us to work together. That's enough for us to be like, you could be Muslim, you could be gay, you could be atheist, you could be whatever, and we could work together. However, if you don't believe in those things, I just think you're fundamentally incompatible with the United States of America. You brought up, like, Islamic immigration as an example. So individual Muslims, I got no beef with. But if you're a theocratic Islamist, you want a Islamic supremacist theocratic nation.
Mhm.
I don't want you in my country. I think you're fundamentally incompatible with the United States.
All
Yeah.
right. We got I see another question here. This one says, which one of the several types of Christianity that signed the Declaration should have they chosen? Hint, there's no ortho founders of America, Christians fleeing persecution from Christians.
Rude.
Which of the several types of Christianity that signed the Declaration should have they chosen? Well, if you're going to leave it to like, the best of the worst, I'd probably go with Catholic at that time, even though, there's problems there. I would go with Catholic, which is a little more rigorous, has a little more historical binding it has a better direction toward the apostles and such. So that's an easy question, Fatty, you fat retard.
I don't
Um,
have a brain.
this one was.
I actually want you to answer if you prefer Christian over some other non-Christian alternative.
Yeah, I do.
Do you know enough about like different Christian like denominations and history to be like, well, that seems, because you don't know much about Orthodoxy, right?
Sure. Anglicans are heretics. Lutherans are pessimistic, nihilistic freaks. Orthodox versus Catholicism. So I was raised Baptist. I was raised fundamentalist Baptist, and then I traveled to Europe, and my father fell in love with the Catholic Church, and so he converted to Catholicism probably when I was about 9, and then I went to Catholic Mass all the way up until I was 18.
What was it like being raised by a gay dad?
No, he's a great guy.
Shit.
But,
I'm just kidding, dude.
I know. I'm laughing. But my mom was non-denominational Protestant. Like she liked the fire and brimstone a little bit, but realistically, she just likes music. But they're both like super devout. The reason why, I don't like necessarily ortho, just because of the way that it's expressed in the modern era. But I do respect that it has roots all the way back to Constantine. It has roots all the way back to the foundations of the church. And I think that there's kind of like an honesty there where the Pope being like the vicar of Christ and being the unchallengeable voice of God on earth, that sounds heretical. I know I got a Catholic guy who's going to argue with me in chat, but
about intercession,
the intercession of the saints, that feels a little pagan. That feels a little weird. Some of the Christian dogma feels weird coming out of Catholicism. Whereas I think that Orthodox history, as far as I understand it, it's actually pretty pragmatic about secular power and church power and sharing power within society to promote a healthy culture.
That's why I invite you to go, because even if you're like still like, I'm not interested, like what's cool about Orthodoxy is you get to go to a church that is as close as we can get to like what Christianity was in like 400, 500, right? Even if you're like, I'm just looking from a purely observational point, like I think everyone should go into a divine liturgy just to experience like the historical connection to our concept of Christianity today is so insane, dude. I mean, bass solos and fog machine. He is mighty. Come up. Like it's crazy, dude. And when I never knew about Orthodoxy at all growing up, and the first time I walk in there, it was like actually going into a time machine, like unexplainable experience that you have, because it's so contrasting to modernity. I mean, we are just rocked with modernity in the West. It's to me, it's horrifying for different reasons than maybe you would think.
Well, I'm also a Warhammer nerd, and so when I see Ukrainian and Russian priests blessing weapons before they go into battle, I'm like, nice.
Like, yeah.
That's
Nice.
awesome. Justin Henley for $5 said, Connor points, the judicial branch interprets the Constitution, including the preamble. Can Christians interpret differently than what you think is obvious?
Of course. One of the things is like freedom of conscience, freedom of speech is kind of enshrined in the First Amendment. You can believe whatever the fuck you want to believe. And then not just that, I understand. So if you're a real Christian, okay, if you're a real Christian, You think the creator of the universe instantiated himself into a human being to communicate with humans directly about like morality, how they should live, how they should be, and also to like seek penance, forgiveness, mercy, atonement, and all that kind of stuff through Christ, so that you could achieve eternal salvation. If you believe that, I don't know why the fuck you would care about secular laws at all. Like, if you believe that sincerely, that God came to earth and communicated with humanity directly, of course God's law would be supreme. So I think it'd be hypocritical of me to ask you to ignore a core tenet of your belief to exist, within my society.
All right. We got 2 more questions I see here. There's one here. Dane says for $5, Jim Bob, true or false? CN doesn't advocate for the people like counterpoints described, but or counterpoints. Sorry, I said counterpoints. Like counterpoints described, but rather it advocates for a moral social code.
Yeah, I guess. I'm not sure I could. Yeah, I mean, in a sense, you're not advocating for the people. In a sense, you just want them to pursue all of their pleasures, right? Me and Connor both agree the hedonism leads to basically removed responsibility, where you're just like in a fucking helmet world where you're just jizzing all day, right? Well, that's not going to keep a society floating, right? So, in a sense, that's true. We're actually prescribing some legal consequences for behavior, but also I agree with Connor that we want to run with our social pressure apparatus as well. It's very powerful. We often don't realize how powerful social pressure, shame, especially with men. Dude, the only reason I started working out, and I have a long way to go, is just complete pure male to male shame. You know what I mean? Glory to God.
No, I mean that's great. And what I would say is that there are different variations of Christian nationalism. I'm happy that we didn't deal with like the LARPy version tonight. No offense to Fuentes and the Groypers or whatever, but I find their Christian nationalism super LARPy, where they're going to be like, we're going to get in there and it's going to be like a Catholic dictatorship and everybody's going to convert to Catholicism and we're going to beat the shit out of the gays until they go back into the closet. And it's like, what? Like none of this is achievable.
Well, none of them have families either.
Right. Whereas if you're just saying like, no, I believe that this is the group of people that I want to advocate for through policy. And I believe that God's law is supreme to man's law. Therefore, not only do I find it not hypocritical, and speaking like as if I were a Christian nationalist, not only is it not hypocritical,
you will be
seek advocacy for these people, it's almost a moral duty to do so because power abhors a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find that anywhere near as distasteful as LARPing pseudo-fascistic theocratic authoritarianism.
All right. And this other one, I read it like a question and it wasn't a question, but we got a big 50 here, so I'll highlight this
Fugazi.
one. No Fugazi says, hey, Jim Bob, he lost to me twice. He's an equivocation king, but great job destroying him.
Thank you, Cooley.
Shout out Cooley for that.
Hold on, I'll address that too.
Are you going to say something racist to him? Go for it.
I mean, listen, if America was truly free, I would just start dropping slurs. But no, what was it? There was just this debate where he was just like he just kept asserting repeatedly. And by the way, this is kind of why I brought it up. He just kept asserting like, oh, I'm right. And, oh, you guys didn't bring any evidence. You didn't bring any evidence. The evidence that we brought, he was saying that there was no evidence of sedition or conspiracy or any kind of overthrow in reference to January 6, 2021. Me and a different person on the panel basically said, like, Enrique Tarrio's court case. And he's like, you got nothing. And so what I would tell the audience is like, listen, don't respond to the emotions of the conversation. Great rhetoricians can make you feel certain ways about a conversation. Listen to the actual words and what's being built as a conception. And if a motherfucker, no offense, Fugazi, but fuck you. If a motherfucker like that is saying, oh, you didn't bring any evidence, but people actually just brought you evidence, you just say they didn't bring any evidence. No offense, Fugazi, but you're a fucking liar. So suck a dick, dumb shit.
All right. And with that, we're gonna wrap up the audience Q&A portion. Right. Again, huge thanks to everyone who sent in super chats to all of the channels tonight. Big help, and all of that support helps everyone keep bringing you content. Right. And a big respect to both the debaters stepping into the arena. Again, whether you agreed or disagreed, it takes more than you guys know to come out here and test these ideas in front of the live audience. So make sure you show the debaters some love. Go sub up, show them some support. Are you both staying for the after panel portion?
I'll hang out. Yeah.
What time is it? I'll say that I'll stay until midnight. I'll probably stay until 12:30.
All right.
And then I'll be like, all right, guys, I'm out. And then I'll stay for another 30 minutes and then I'll go to bed.
All right. Awesome. So we're going to roll. There's a debate outro so that it gives you, it's about 3 minutes. It gives you guys and myself as well time to go take a piss, get a drink, whatever you need to do. It's about 3 minutes. And as I'm rolling the outro chat, I'm going to drop the link to join the panel in the chat for you guys. Just a heads up, if you're coming up to try and troll or just yell over everyone or any of that shit, you're just going to get muted and then probably booted. So give it up before you try it. And if you're enjoying what you've seen tonight, okay, make sure you subscribe to the Speakeasy channel so you don't miss more debates just like this every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. All right, so stick around. Once the outro goes down, the Chaos and Chill panel begins. And again, thank you everybody for being here tonight for Swords of Reason.
Step into the circle where the echoes collide. Truth through the static, no place to hide. Iron tongue, sharpen fire in our breath. We dance with conviction on the edge of death. Your words are bullets, mine are storms. Ideas forged where lightning forms. No retreat, no treason. We clash our swords of reason. Cut through lies with steel precision. No faith, no fear, just raw collision. We clash our swords of reason. Facts burn brighter than a prophet's flame. Egos crumble, but the truth remains. Every scar, a mark of thought's crusade. In the battlefield of minds we've made. Speak your truth, but bear the cost. Every claim can still get lost in the war of voice and vision. Feel the friction. We clash our swords of reason. No silence left for indecision. Ideas break with loud precision. We clash our swords of reason. Strike me with logic, I'll plead my proof. We cut through chaos to carve out truth. Let the sparks fly, let the echo scream. This is no debate, it's a metal dream. We clash our swords of reason. In the storm of thought's collision. No surrender, no retreat. In the war of words we fight.